It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Wow. Whew. We just got off a very hot keynote at WWDC. A lot of new stuff from Apple. Fortunately, we've got the kings of Apple analysts here in studio with us. Andy Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times, Rene, Ritchie from iMore, Alex Lindsay from the Pixel Corps. We're going to talk about everything Apple announced today next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 405, recorded June 2nd, 2014. WWDC Keynote. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by LegalZoom. Visit LegalZoom.com to save on your legal needs and gain access to a network of legal plan attorneys for guidance. LegalZoom is not a law firm, but provides self-help services at your specific direction. Visit LegalZoom.com and use the offer code MBW to receive $10 off at checkout. And by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create your own professional website or online portfolio. For a free 2-week trial and 10% off, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code MacBreak. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, or other Apple product is worth at Gazelle.com. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, a very special MacBreak edition, a day early because Apple started WWDC on a Monday. And look at this. It's brought in all the folks. Andy Ihnatko is here. It's great to see you, Andy.
Great to be breathing that beautiful Petaluma air.
They rode up in a stretch limousine today, ladies.
In style.
Again, well, see, we said, are you here to pick us up from WWDC? He said yes. And then 10 minutes into the trip, it was clear he was actually waiting for Dre. But he was already booked, so he may as well.
You forgot about Dre.
That's Rene Ritchie from iMore, also in studio. Nice to have you.
Nice of you. Leo, they had a Ferrari and they had a tiny little smart car in Moscone, but the limo was in between.
I like the stretch. You look good getting out of it. You really did. Actually, we thought there'd be more people. I think that's what we sent a stretch for you. But that's all right. It worked out fine. And Alex Lindsay, who was here earlier this morning, is doing a long day.
I didn't get a
question in, you know.
This is, I think, one of the most active question engines I think we've ever had.
Yeah.
We've got 250 people, over 200 questions already.
What is the URL if people want to ask?
It is bit.ly/mbw-405 because someone keeps on stealing our URLs.
MBW-405 at Bitly. And Andy, they're saying your Skype is particularly clear today, so that's nice. Every once in a while,
It's going to be so weird not to have Skype to blame for my misjudgments.
I love the media badge. These two, actually, you took yours off, Rene. It's all right. You can wear it. It's show off a little bit. Show that you got invited to the event.
Yeah, where was my invite? Moscone
West this morning, a couple of thousand people. Tim Cook took the stage sharp at 10 a.m., got off by noon, and they had a heck of a lot to say. None of it, though, will tip our hands. None of it having to do with hardware.
No.
No hardware. Zero.
No Phil Schiller.
No Phil Schiller, which I thought was a little odd.
He's hardware.
Okay, that's why. But this is, and Harry McCracken had a good article on Technologizer saying, hey, don't get it all hot and bothered about hardware because this is a developer show. You shouldn't expect more than that.
Yeah, and I mean, the other things you wouldn't see, we didn't see, hey, and also, here's the exotic world city where we're building a wonderful new Apple store, and we'd like to show that to you now.
I was pleased to see that.
Yeah, but none of that, no boasting about financials.
Right.
There's absolutely not 5 inches worth of space inside this place to talk about anything but developing stuff, new features, new ideas.
That's not always been the case. I mean, Apple has announced new hardware at WWDC, but this was 4,000 new APIs, a host of new functionality. There was a lot to say.
New programming language.
New language.
When a new feature set for Siri gets one slide that they don't fully explain, that's how much content they had to put into this thing.
And I think it was one of
the biggest WWDC keynotes they've ever done.
I was going to say, I think it was the densest keynote I can remember.
Not only that, but so much great stuff. It's
exactly.
Like we'll talk about this later on, but I feel as though a lot of things that I thought were core Apple philosophies about here is how we define iOS, here is what we're willing to let people do, what we're not willing to let people do, what we think developers should do, what they think they shouldn't do. A lot of that stuff got rolled back today. It's exciting.
So they at the beginning, Tim Cook divided it into 3 distinct sections. There was OS 10, there was iOS, and then a kind of an odd thing that said Dev. We'll get to all 3 one after the other, but let's start with OS 10 10.10. Those pictures of El Capitan confirmed. It is not called OS 10 Half Dome.
OS 10 Weed.
You know what? I thought OS 10 Weed. It's smoking. that would
or
have
a
been
tip
great.
of the hat to Dre, straight out of Compton. Would have been fun, too.
Yeah.
But no, they decided to call it Yosemite, which is a great name, actually. I think that makes a lot of sense. 10.10 will be free, they announced, available this fall. Developers got seed copies. So let's talk about what's new in 10. It is a much bigger change than Mavericks was.
Yeah, I'd say so. But at least our first worry got set aside because we all heard about, okay, they're going to make the interface a lot more iOS-like. They're going to make this part of this new mandate of where everyone's developing the exact same thing. I thought it was very, very subtle what they did. They added translucency to not content areas, but to tool areas and window areas that actually integrates the screen a lot better than I think that works on iOS, because iOS you're always in one app anyway. It's when you have multiple apps open in the same place that you really want to feel as though you're using the same thing. New system font, which is sort of like when your boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife changes their hairstyle after 10 years, still the same person, just a little bit of twist that you have to get used to.
It's a shave and a haircut.
I'm trying to describe it. It's kind of it's a sans serif again, but it's thinner. It looks like kind of
it's a little rounder.
Is it applesauce? I couldn't tell.
I don't know. I'm not a type wonk, so there are people, I'm sure they're blogging that talk about exactly the advantages of these things. It was an interesting challenge, though, because at least when they changed the system font for iOS, they know that all of these things are going on Retina devices, whereas they know that they have to deal with people who are probably still using like old VGA monitors, CRTs.
I think it's very clean.
Yeah. It's very, very pretty. I didn't notice. I was not distracted
Chad,
at all.
you can get I think a close-up now of it so people at least be able to see
and
that
it follows
menu.
the same core concepts, the deference, the depth, and the clarity that iOS introduced last year, but it does it in a way that's very authentic to the Mac.
What I'm thrilled about is they did not emphasize full-screen apps. They didn't even show any full-screen apps. Clearly, they understand that desktop computing is still Windows.
There's still drop shadows, Leo.
Yeah, they still have drop shadows around the windows. Wow.
But I think, in many ways, though, I think the drop shadows is an important communicative tool, which what's in front and what's behind, and I think it without those it'd be more difficult.
I'm pleased.
To look at.
I didn't want it to be iOS-ified. It is flatter though, and for instance, the calendar app that looks like iOS 7. Absolutely.
It looks great though. I think
it's beautiful. Yeah. They did say that it will pick up. And I don't know, is this translucency? I didn't really see it in the stream, the background.
Yeah,
what's it going to do?
The toolbars are translucent, so they'll show through to your wallpaper, which gives it that hint of color you get from iOS. But like Andy said, the content area doesn't change. It's just the...
Yeah, and the dock changes. The dock now will pick up the desktop wallpaper.
It's just another communication of here's where your attention should be as you're making your way through the app. Right. Like I said, I do think it's a lot more effectively used in macOS than it is in iOS.
The big difference, though, of course, is under the hood is not so much how it looks, although there is a great new look, but it's. And I like this font.
And black theme. You can get a black theme.
You can get it dark. That's
theme,
a tip of the hat to photographers who don't like the bright light theme. Lightroom, for instance, is dark.
Yeah.
And
actually, I wanted to see the black theme all the way through. You know, I mean, with all the interfaces.
You can have blue or you can have graphite.
Right. Isn't it interesting though? They're even letting people have that choice over the overall look. It's just the Apple typical theory was like we're designing this because we know how to design things, and you're not going to improve on what we did. The fact that we're going to give you an option means that either they're really putting a nod towards photographers and videographers, or they really do appreciate that it doesn't hurt us to let people have one option on the look and feel.
We've heard several times that Craig Federighi skews geekier than his predecessors did, and I think we're getting to enjoy a little bit of...
I love the icons,
the new Apple.
Icons.
We've now brought you both vanilla and chocolate.
You know what I like about this? You're definitely starting to see the post-Steve team assert itself. It's not 180 degrees. It's not about face, but they're expressing themselves.
It's their personalities.
It's slightly different. And I think it's more modern, frankly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to guess where things are coming from inside of Apple. I do think that over the past couple of years, there's a lot more cohesiveness among the Apple team, with people are able to talk to each other a lot more effectively without realizing that, no, we can't climb over this wall. Some
of those barriers are broken down. Johnny Ive's now in charge of all looks and feel across the board, things like that.
Yeah. And they have the development teams can talk to each other, like Andy said. And Andy and I were talking on the way down here. What a performance by Craig Federighi.
Yeah,
it was a marathon, wasn't it? it. He did an Iron Man.
He was funny. He was engaged. He was quick-witted.
He was doing. How long did they rehearse? They did a little behind-the-scene piece of comedy where for one of the chat demos, he's backstage and he has a bad hair day. They must have had someone standing by to freak up his hair,
and then they had a
quickly
chainsaw or something. I don't know.
And then quickly to put it back into place for ready for party time.
Taped ahead of time.
It could have been taped ahead of time, but could you imagine someone on the Apple team from 8 years ago saying, "I'm going to look like an idiot with I'm going to look with really silly hair."
Never would have happened.
Scott put on that sumo suit.
Just saying, "I will do a duck face selfie."
in general, I'd say there was a lot more humor in this than we've seen in the past, all the way across the board. Whether it was Tim Cook taking digs at Windows and Android or other things,
and not so much joke humor, but good humor.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody was fairly in a good mood and was cheerful, and it was not heavy-handed. It wasn't. Let me tell a joke.
Do you remember Bertrand was like, "Redmond, start your photocopiers," and he could get that across. Like his personality, he could sell that kind of humor, and this Craig can do that same thing. Right. Scott never had that kind of.
No. Nor Phil, frankly. No. I think Tim did a really good job. Tim Cook did a really good job, but handing it off to Craig Federighi was a smart move. And some of the bit parts were important, too. We'll get to those in just a little bit. But let's talk a little bit about OS 10, 10.10. To me, the biggest feature is the new Spotlight, the new integration into the OS. In a way, they've Sherlocked Quicksilver and Alfred, all of the...
Napkin?
Yeah, Napkin, too, right. Napkin's the annotation program. Yep. So with a single keystroke, you launch Spotlight not on the upper right-hand corner, but in the middle of the screen, just like Quicksilver. You can type your search, but it's much more interactive than these other tools.
And Bing, I think, got the license there, which was...
Well, now, did they talk about that? But that's interesting. So, for instance, you do a search, a Google-style search in this Spotlight. You'll get a Wikipedia entry or movie times, but not from Google. So is it from
Well, no. So
Bing?
what they did, there's two things that are really interesting here. It's sort of what they started with Siri, which is disintermediating Google. They just get them out of the chain. And Google survives on data. They want all that data from iOS devices. When you go to Siri first, all they see is Apple IP hits. And now with this, you're doing that search directly from Apple. You're not hitting Google first. And a lot of the results they mentioned on stage were Bing results.
Yeah.
So they're aggregating not just from any Wikipedia or Bing or Google. They may be all of the above. But the point is, you don't appear to those places.
Yes, they're in the middle.
Apple does.
Yeah, and that's hugely valuable data that they're not being given access to.
Yeah. And I do think, as we talked about in the actual event, I think that Apple, the long term, is Apple builds its own search functions. I think that it's not going to leave something so integral to what they're doing. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but I think in a year or two, I think we're going to see Apple do its own thing. Because it's just it's like Maps. It's like this huge part of what everyone does, and it's not part of their ecosystem, and I just don't see them leaving that out.
It's just that Maps, search is so hard to crack. Even Bing, with the resources of Microsoft and how much they've bought into that system, and also how much they've created since they bought the people that they bought, that would be such a... it's the one thing where if people do not get good results on page one, that's the last time they use it. I'm interested to see with other features I'm sure we're going to talk about, if Google says, oh, so Safari is now extensible by third parties. We can extend. We'll extend your non-Chrome browser so that it works exactly like Google.
Extend the heck out of it.
Thank you, Apple. What a great idea.
I think Apple's doing a couple of interesting things. They're making the ecosystem a higher premium. It's really much more valuable. But in some ways they're opening it too, which I think is an interesting one hand and the other hand.
We'll talk about that more when we get into iOS. But yeah,
that's really where you see it.
Yeah. But, I mean, continuity is the feature that I absolutely love.
This is an OS 10 and iOS feature. Go ahead, tell us what happens.
The basic idea is that now your iPad can be aware that you have a Mac and that you have an iPhone, and that they're both in the same house together.
Is it using Bonjour, iBeacon? Do we know?
They haven't elaborated yet. At least they didn't on stage.
So I'm not even going to guess.
Somehow, you have to be on the same network, I gathered.
Yes, I don't think it works.
No, they didn't say that. They said it had to be within proximity.
But it wouldn't make sense if it works off of across the internet. I mean, if it's the whole idea is that
the whole idea, send the data over.
My guess is
because the whole idea is that, like, I'm here and I'm working on pages and something that I need to do, and so okay, I really got to leave the house right now because I'm gonna miss my train. I grab my iPad, and my iPad is aware that I was using Pages. I was on this document. My editing point was right here, and so when I activate Pages, excuse me, I don't even have to activate it on my iPad. I didn't see the user interface specifically, but there's a little dingus that appears on the iPad that says, oh, if you just swipe up from here, we will make this look exactly like that.
That's amazing.
And you'll simply be able to get into the cab and start working.
Now, it makes sense if you're using iWork, and that's one of the reasons they unified the iWork platform.
Well, they said it was iCloud based, which is a nice thing for Apple, because a lot of their stuff depends on iCloud in order to get in the Mac app. Like, you have to be in the Mac App Store to use iCloud. There's a whole bunch of things that tie you to Apple when you use it. My guess would be that it's Bluetooth LE, and then once it detects the connection, does a Wi-Fi direct not the name brand Wi-Fi direct, but a direct ad hoc Wi-Fi connection.
That would make sense. So you get the data transfer, of course, but the Bluetooth LE or iBeacon in effect.
But it's hugely secure, which is a nice thing too.
Right. They did use an example of specifically of your iPhone rings, but it's in your bedroom upstairs and it's charging, but you're downstairs on your iPad. The phone call can go through your iPad. You'll get a notification. You can answer it and actually talk to the iPad.
You can talk on the iPad as
you can
well
talk,
as
you can
the
talk
desktop.
You can talk to the iPad.
The iPad.
They talk to Dre through
that was an
iOS
iPad.
and
That's right.
through that device. So that to me that indicates they might want to be using a transport that's a little bit further throw than Bluetooth LE.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there's a secret sauce with 4 different.
Unless they're using Bluetooth LE to decide where you are, and then using other protocols to move
Well, if
the
you're
actual
plugged, because they did mention plugged in if you're further away, so maybe the Wi-Fi goes on all the time when you're plugged in.
Maybe.
Like it does for
But
the
what's
Wi-Fi
nice
sync.
is it's zero config. The user doesn't have to say, oh, that's my iPad, that's my iPhone. It sees you're in the same space and allows you to
Because
operate.
you certainly wouldn't want to be like in an office.
Well, yeah, but
building.
what about an office?
And we wouldn't want to be in an office building and say, well, thank you for interrupting my meeting to tell me that I have a phone call, because I don't really care that I have a phone call. I'm at my computer.
You'll
right
have to
now.
share an iCloud
But that's
account.
it's Apple ID based. At least I think it's Apple ID based. Like iMessage only goes to your devices.
So I won't see Sarah Lane's iPage.
Unless you're part of
iPages.
family sharing. Leo.
Right.
That's you want to take the relationships to that level. I want you on my family sharing plan.
You do know that we can't have more than 6 people in our family anymore. Okay, sorry about that, but the family sharing is
another nod to the Chinese market. Very, very important.
It is a nice feature, especially for people who have, like I did. I mean, we had one Apple ID. Everybody in the family used it. I have rap music, French bistro songs. All
Your
sorts of
genius
weird
selections
stuff.
are amazing.
Yeah, it's
thanks, Dan.
crazy because both Henry and Abby used it. That doesn't have to happen anymore. They can have their own accounts, but we can share data.
As long as it's all tied to the exact same credit card, it's considered a.
So
great.
it's a different account, but same credit card.
You can have separate IDs. They did mention that so long as it's all connected to the same credit card. But because that's why some of these features actually work. This really great feature where you can allow your kids to make purchases off of the account, but you can set it up so that when they try to make a purchase, you get an alert saying, "Hi, your son wants to buy this. Is that okay?"
Can I tell you?
If it works with in-app
how
purchases.
huge this is, because about every month I'll get about 30 iTunes bills for in-app purchases.
Donuts.
That Michael for donuts, not for me. And we'll have to go, Michael, did you buy a lot of stuff today? And he goes, but now we'll say, and you can push a button that says not now or okay.
You can say dismiss no.
huge.
Yeah. Well, let's see, like after iOS ships in the fall, let's take a look at the January keynote event to see where the revenue curve goes after people can no longer buy more donuts.
Well, remember, Apple did get a class action lawsuit over this in-app purchase thing. They did lose. They had to give everybody some money.
Oh, they can buy their way out of anything. Like Bill Murray at the end of Kingpin.
And I think that one of the things that we saw over and over and over again throughout the keynote is that Apple is truly playing their strong cards. They're not, obviously they're pulling in a bunch of other things, but they're really playing this, we own an ecosystem, and we're the only ones that have a complete ecosystem, and so we're going to keep on tying all these things together and show you how we're going to tie them all together.
Well, and a slap to both Google Drive and to Dropbox, because iCloud Drive, if it works, and that's a big if, because Apple does not have a lot of success in this sphere. But if it works, it's less expensive than Dropbox, about the same price as Google Drive. It allows you to attach 6 GB attachments in your email without actually attaching it.
Mail drop, yeah.
Allows you to store any kind of file on there and have access to it on any device.
Document
Including
picker for iOS.
And for developers, they've basically done Google's App Engine or Amazon's EC3. So app developers can use for free the basic services of
HealthKit.
iCloud. Yeah. So this is a whole new iCloud. This must be the North Carolina data center online.
Possibly.
Yes.
Possibly several.
Maybe
It's although that was one of the most exciting parts of the keynote, and a keynote full of exciting things. For me, it solves a big problem that I've always had with iPad. This is one of the reasons why I kind of forsook iCloud a year ago and went exclusively to Dropbox. The fact that I'm putting this into this document into iCloud jail, and that's going to cause problems for me.
Right.
So this
is a hard sell to developers, because developers have effectively been screwed by this all along. This is one thing that was supposed to work years ago, never worked, was document sync.
We saw OmniSync, we saw Vesper Sync, we saw developers rolling their own solutions.
Yeah,
right.
Everybody, and do you remember what it was like when you're talking to developers and every one of them is saying, we have worked one whole year trying to get this to work.
We really tried.
We are giving up and building something brand new.
Are they once burned, twice shy, or are they going to, what was the feeling?
But this is more. This is stuff that you can do in the cloud. It's like, it's not just sync.
I know, but the sync was a failure.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, are developers going to buy this?
Well, it's not a question if developers buy it. They will buy into it if the users buy into it.
And users will for the functionality.
And the fact that they're now giving away so much iPhoto storage and video storage, essentially for free. And if you want to expand that up to a terabyte, the terms for expanding that storage are really
Very
attractive.
Yeah.
So good that I want to disguise my Word docs as .jpegs. But if it turns out that users start to rely on iCloud for that sort of stuff, and they start to buy that storage, they're going to ask for they're going to stop switching to Dropbox or to Microsoft's cloud systems.
But I think that Apple, they were limited before, and I think that while a terabyte, while a terabyte seems like a lot, there's a lot. Once you start shooting videos and everything else,
from Flickr. Right.
But
now.
I'm just saying, I don't understand why Apple doesn't say, okay, and then if you want to buy 5 terabytes or 10 terabytes, this is how much it costs. As a user, as a power user, I'm fine with saying, because my next
event, Alex,
my library is 2 terabytes. And so
I'm just not sure that people who are going to be using this iCloud service are really interested in shooting.
They're going to let you be a pro and use some other service.
I know, but again, I think that this is, I don't. But what I don't understand is why they don't.
I think it's. I mean, it's great that I love. You see the camera that I have. I love photography, but most of the people I talk to, they use not only their iPhone as a camera, but also as their storage device, as their presentation device, and so that's the mindset that they're in, and it works just great for them.
But I think that the issue is that it creates this thing where they get excited about it. What people will do is get excited about it. They'll start uploading everything to it. They'll want it all there. They'll want their home movies. They'll want their everything up there. And then they'll hit that ceiling, and now they're trapped because now they have
time for another announcement. Though they could next year say, "We've seen how you're using it, and we think that we're going to go to."
But it's going to be really frustrating for those people in between. It's just that they should just
come on,
create
Alex. They're waiting to see if what the adoption curve is, if they can support everybody.
And they don't want the
5%
taken.
I saw data on the largest on the typical HD film that people are shooting on their devices, and it makes me think that they would take a long time to hit a terabyte. You're talking about 2-minute clips. They're talking about they left the phone on, they shot for 6 minutes. Right. We're not, and they don't tend to edit things together to tell a longer story. It really is, hey, look at little Trelfaz. He's doing his little trick right now, and then they hold it 10 seconds too long, and then that's really the 68 seconds they actually wanted.
And it's mitigated now because you can all have separate accounts, and because all the new stuff in messages and in photos, you can just share that stuff, so it'll all show up in the same stream without having to have shared accounts anymore.
Let's finish continuity. So continuity is the idea that everything in the Apple ecosystem in your house all talks to one another. You mentioned phone calls.
AirDrop.
A lot of excitement over Instant Hotspot. I was surprised, but people went, "Whoa, that's
because
great."
it's such a natural thing.
It's
like you've got internet on one of these devices, and now you want to connect your Wi-Fi only iPad to it. Instead of right now, the system is that the iPad is treated like it's a Kindle, like it's an Android device. It doesn't. The Mac doesn't do anything special to make it easier. Right now, these two, again, they are aware of their proximity. So now all you have to do is go into the Wi-Fi drop down. They'll see, oh, here's your iPad. Do you want to share the Wi-Fi connection to this guy?
So
yep, absolutely. And
does
now you got Wi-Fi.
Does this bypass AT&T's requirements on your phone to make, so if you're one of the old...
No, of course not.
Yeah, that's on the carrier profile on your phone.
Yeah, that doesn't go away.
No, but I'm saying, does this?
It'll tell you no faster if you don't have the plan.
Okay, so it doesn't.
No, I doubt very much they bypass.
One of the things I wanted to ask you guys about is, and I know I'm splitting hairs here, but every time they mention iTunes, like the search will show you iTunes results, and it'll show you existing results on iTunes. They kept saying stream, and iTunes now doesn't do that on devices. It does progressive download because they're not allowed to stream. And I don't know if I'm cutting words or
they bought Beats. They have
but
streaming.
This was movies.
Oh, it's movies.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Jimmy Iovine.
That's more stuff you don't have to keep on your device. Because right now, I watch a movie, it takes up 4 gigs on my device.
It was clearly an issue. If you have more than 1,000 photos and you're going to sync it between all your devices, I can't put that on my iPhone. So they had to respond to that. Yeah. Did they say it would stream any kind of content or just?
They mentioned photos, they mentioned videos, but they didn't get into details on it.
Yeah. There may be more. The devil may be in the details on this. How about messages? Because that's kind of a pain point, let's put it that way. The new messages now will allow you to receive iMessage and SMS messages on your Mac. You can have group conversations. Android, you can record. Well, one of the...
They solved the other end of the problem.
You mean that toxic health stew called Android?
Yeah, well, no, but the thing is, people were complaining that they couldn't get SMS.
Did they solve the Android problem?
I want to see that. I want to see if now you get the SMS instead of the iMessage.
There's got to be at least one engineer in a closet working on that right now.
But didn't you do the touchpad
short audio clips? By the way, the founder of WhatsApp, Jan Koum, said, well, They stole it all from us. You got your 16 billion, Jan. Just relax. But this is WhatsApp functionality.
Yeah, and there was BBM before
deal.
WhatsApp, and he knows that very well because he basically built BBM cross-platform.
Right. But did it do audio?
Yeah.
BBM? Yeah. You
Well,
said
BBM, audio,
groups?
video groups.
All right. All that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's their bread and butter.
The ability to silence certain groups, silence certain people, find things not in your master timeline of all of your text messages, but I want to talk about this conversation I have with this one person and grab this photo out of it.
We're talking about
Also-
Apple's announcements today at the WWDC, and we're focusing first on Yosemite OS 10 10.10. Go ahead. You said also.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, also another cool little tidbit, which I don't think we've seen, someone might correct me, in operation on an iPhone, awareness of the position of the phone and what it's doing. It has always had the ability to say, okay, am I being held up to a face because I've got the proximity of the light sensor?
I love
so I'll
that.
turn
If
off
you
the
get
screen.
a message, you hold it up to your face and it plays the audio?
But now, yeah, exactly. If you get an audio message, you don't have to click and then go through this. If you just simply pick it up and go like that, it'll say, okay, I'll play this through the handset right now.
Siri does that, though. I mean, when you pick it up,
Siri
you
Raise
can
to
talk
Speak had
Siri.
that for a while. Yeah.
Similarly, if you want to record a voice message yourself, you lift it up, record it, then when you put it down, it says, okay, he's done. I'm gonna turn it into text right now and then send it as a message.
I found that was hit and miss with Siri. I don't know how much better it will work with these.
Well, it's contextual awareness, and that's Apple's next big move, is to make all these sensors understand things.
As long as it works.
We've got that M7
this is the
processor
M7.
that hasn't been used
Yeah.
as much as we thought it would by now.
Right.
So
This is that processor in the iPhone
As long
that
as it
just
works.
sits and looks and sees what's going on.
Just all I gotta say is just try to use GoToMeeting and put it up to your thing to talk into GoToMeeting and watch what Siri does every time you put it up. So the thing is that while it works, it'd be
turn
nice
it off. Yeah.
you have to turn it off. Mine is off all the time because it's.
Mail has been enhanced to include Sketch capabilities. So thank you, Sketch. We won't be needing you anymore. You can annotate documents. They had a loop, which was fascinating. Fill out forms in the email messages. I presume all of this stuff is Mac specific. You're not, or
Yeah,
Apple specific.
they showed the Mac and they showed the iPad. I don't think they showed iPhone Mail.
Yeah. Safari been completely updated, and by the way, private mode browsing in Safari, according to Ben, uses DuckDuckGo instead of Google. I like
Private, Leo.
That's, by the way, the selling point that Apple has. This reminded me of last night's Silicon Valley season ender, where if you can provide all of these services and do it in a way that is private, you've got Google one. That's all you need to be.
They emphasized that a lot during the shows of privacy and security. Security first, privacy first. Now we're giving you these features and we're keeping it secure.
yeah, like with the new keyboard features, that they made a very big point of not only does it, well, again, nothing we'll get into when we talk about iOS, but we will learn, this keyboard will learn how you type so it can predict better. But all of that stuff is kept on the device; it is never shared.
Right. We're going to get to iOS 8 in just a second. Let's just finish up on 10. Anything else?
Yeah, I saw a giant smiley face from Don Melton when the Safari stuff was announced, which is nice.
He's WebKit.
He's created it and he handed it off, so it looks like the kids did well with it.
All right. Good man.
That's interesting, too, that now Spotlight search results are also integrated into the address bar when you do a search. It's not just a Google search. It will also find you documents. It will also find you calendar events.
This is something that actually Microsoft put into Windows 8. It was a little bit controversial when they did it, this Bing everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think people got used to it and, in fact, like it. Once you're used to it, the idea that, hey, I want this search to go everywhere.
Yeah. I think also part of it is, and I hope I'm not reading too much into it, I really think it is partly to try to train Mac users to your first go-to solution is I'll use Spotlight. I'm sure Spotlight will give me the document I want, will give me the person I want, the calendar. Realize that now when you search for like Keynote, it will find you the app and find you files that have that name, but it will also say, oh, maybe he wants to look at recent documents he's created or used with Keynote. So in addition to the results, I'll give him a little launcher doc of the stuff that he's recently worked with. So I really think they're trying to make Spotlight put it more into the center of the user interface.
Now, of course, somebody in the chat room is inevitably pointing out, look, none of this is new. Various bits and pieces are on other operating systems, have been around. Previews had some of this capability they're putting in.
Nokia invented
now.
it in 1812.
Nokia invented it in 1812. BlackBerry, BBM invented it. It's not that there is anything so unique and innovative. It's the ecosystem that makes this unique. The fact that this is an Apple can work across the entire Apple ecosystem.
It's implementation and packaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is and in some ways you know, for instance, the way notifications work, yes, a lot of that. For instance, now they have the Today View that they had in iOS. That's
Widgets
now
in
made it
Notification
center.
Center.
Widgets, but that's a huge deal because that means third parties can put widgets in notifications.
Yeah, and it's not on the desktop. It's not a desktop destination. It's something that you can pull down when you want it. So it's this. We're getting closer to this push interface concept where the stuff finds you.
It seems better,
fascinating.
frankly. I never used the widgets in the dashboard. I presume dashboards did.
Well, remember Vista had the sidebar?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's
Actually, I used the sidebar, but nobody else did.
it's part of
killed it.
Isn't computing in general moving towards away from the idea of big operating systems and big functions and to the idea of I want to enable you to dip into this to get the one piece of information or the one function you want right now without having to launch a tip calculator or having to launch a big search engine to get something. So I will take that whatever little control and whatever little data viewer will give you your answer and make you just interact with that.
Well, and I think one of the things is that we have so many electronic devices between our little fitness watches and our phones and everything else, and our soon to be our refrigerators and our dryers and washers. The issue is that it's going to become more and more of a problem is this idea that it's going to be easy to use all of these, and I'm not going to spend half of my day trying to figure out how they all integrate together. And I think Apple is taking huge steps in this idea that we're just going to make it easy for you to do many of these things and tie all these things in a way that only they can do. And I think that's what they're continuing to extend.
Yeah, remember the market. The market isn't going, well, Android had that or Nokia had that. The market's saying, make my life better, make my life easier.
Make my workflow work.
Can you do that? And if you can do this, that's a very compelling argument.
Apple doesn't do bar bet features. I'm talking about where I got a $20 bar bet that I can do a notification that has an active thing inside. Okay, great, get your $20. You've also built something that's not very useful, but you won your $20 bar bet. They're willing to simply say, we have to integrate it into the entire experience so that your first go-to thought will be, I won't even launch an app for this. I will go to Spotlight for this.
Right.
All across the board, everything
we'll
we're
have to
talking about.
relearn habits, and that's part of the problem with stuff like this. If you don't relearn the habit, mission control and dashboard failed, not because they weren't great, but because it was a different thing that we had to do.
But we're willing to do that so long as it gives us, it's more efficient and more natural.
Right.
It's like when Spotlight had the ability to do math. I had to quote learn how to do things, but now why would I launch a calculator app and then like click on the individual buttons? I can just simply say,
that.
"Oh yeah." It's like it's not learning when you figure out this is the natural way to do things. Why didn't they do this?
You're a smarter rat.
And for somebody who just uses Safari and Word, they will never open Notification Center. They'll never be bothered by a widget. All of that will be completely disappeared.
And that's the way to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't look for it, it's not there. If you look for it, you'll find it really easily.
It is a challenge, and this is the challenge Microsoft had with Windows 8, was there is hidden stuff, there is discoverable stuff, which nobody discovered. Yeah. And Apple had that problem. I mean, Dashboard was, I think, fundamentally undiscovered.
I wish I had the full background story on Dashboard, because that's the Christmas present that the kids inside Apple were so eager to get, and they were so happy to play with it on Christmas Day. But on the 27th, they forgot it existed completely. I can't think of another feature where they pulled the AC power cord. They didn't take the body out of the sitting room. It just like Norman Bates' mother just got smaller and smaller.
Confabulator on Linux, and then they got. Everyone suddenly went gaga for the widgets after Confabulator had them.
Confabulator was the thing, and I remember talking to the creator of Confabulator, who was one of the early Sherlockies. Yeah. A lot of companies got Sherlocked today, and we're going to talk more about it. One good piece of news: there is going to be a beta program. Did they say whether this is the public beta they did with 10.9.3? Yeah. So you can go right now to Apple Seed.
Don't go right now.
And Tim Cook is on it. He wanted us all to know that he's on the beta program.
Is he?
So don't expect him to reply to your emails. He's probably have restart issues.
Is he
NDA'd?
Right. So you're suggesting people not do this?
I never, ever recommend betas for anybody who doesn't need to test new software.
Second computer, like it's your second computer. It's something else.
It's a hard drive.
Or hard drive.
At this stage, I wouldn't even say a second computer.
But Microsoft did their public betas, and they seem to have gone...
But that's different.
It's a very good way to do it.
Microsoft's plan has always been, we're going to show you, we know that this is going to be a jarring change for you, so we want to get you used to it. And then, what are the differences between Windows 8, between the first developer preview and the actual shipping product? I don't think Apple is the kind of company that will say, gee, everybody seems to want less translucency, so we'll back off on that. I think that they know what they want to do. I think this is more about bug testing and getting crash reports than anything else.
Well, they will make the font thicker if they need to.
It's fun. I mean, I'm gonna put iOS 8 certainly on my devices as early as I can, but I would not use it on anything that I need to work.
Don't delay. Only available to the first 1 million applicants. And I just signed up. It says, thanks for signing up for the OS 10 beta program. We'll email you when OS 10 Yosemite beta is available for download. And Andy says, don't do it.
And if you're a registered developer, you can just pay your money and
you can do it right
beta.
now. Yeah. And I actually am, but I don't know what. I guess I could get it faster. I downloaded Xcode 6 right away. We'll talk about that. And home and a whole lot more. There is a ton to talk about today. It was an amazing WWDC. And I think the consensus of this panel, anyway, is some very, very interesting stuff.
There was some talk before the show that it was going to be the biggest announcement since iOS 2. But it was hard to tell what they meant, and they really meant that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the conversations that I had been having for 3 days before it really got my interest up, doubled almost every 18 hours.
And you're not disappointed?
Not at all. I mean, it's we'll talk about iOS and other things like that later, but so many things I've always wanted iOS to do, they're committing to. So many things that I've thought of, why doesn't Apple do this with a Mac? They're doing it now. And everything that I was really afraid about, and mostly we're talking about the new user interface for Yosemite, was like, wow, I shouldn't have been worried at all because it doesn't look like a new Mac OS interface. It looks like the next version of the Mac interface, which is all I wanted. So I am a happy, happy person right now. This is an exciting day.
Google I/O is coming up less than a month from now. I imagine Google will have a response to all of this.
They have to bring out some more of those driverless cars to sort of take the edge off of the innovation.
Do you feel like there's a kind of a red target on Larry Page's back? I mean...
Well, the thing that, and I saw a couple people mention this too, is that iOS has been secure and Android has been flexible. And now iOS is finding ways to stay secure and be flexible. And it's easier to do that than it is to try to fix security afterwards.
Very interesting.
And I think that Google's other challenges, I mean, is the forking. I mean, you know, between Amazon and, you know, for doing their own version, but more importantly, Samsung doing its own operating system. You know, I think that, and the fact that you have a hard time getting, you know, the phone companies to let everything upgrade. You know, I think that these are challenges that Google has to sort out as Apple continues to go down. I don't think it's what I think is great for us is I think it stays even. I don't think either one has a great advantage, but I think that those are challenges that Google really has to figure out how they're going to address.
Well, without getting into a 20-minute distraction, I think that it's not always an apples to apples sort of comparison between what Google needs to do with Android and what Apple has to do with iOS, because Android has to serve every phone user out there, and there are people who will never in a million years buy an iPhone for economic, social, or usage reasons, and those are the people who are buying Android devices. And the fact that if Android is forked between a Kindle Fire and a Nexus 7 tablet, that's okay because a Kindle Fire, if you're ever aware of any operating system whatsoever, that's a failure of design given what the Fire is supposed to do. So it's a complicated sort of math there.
Question from Twitter from R.W. Hewitt. Maybe this is for you, Rene. Will I have to upgrade to Maverick before I can upgrade to Yosemite? Do we know?
It's hard. The last time they did a massive amount of upgrade, like you could upgrade from I think all the way back to Snow Leopard all the way to Maverick. So I'm imagining they can probably figure that out again.
Yeah. And it will be free. It will be in the App Store
it's
probably.
It's free in perpetuity, I think, as far as their last announcement.
We might as well say that from now on. And the public beta. That's the first time they've done that for a major release.
They seemed really, really proud when Tim looked at the only pie charts we saw today were how bad Android is as protecting people from malware, but also here is the percentage of Mac users that are now using the latest version of the operating system. And there's a tiny, tiny little sliver of people that maybe forgot that they put their Mac Mini in a closet 3 years ago and haven't booted it up since. It's like everybody's using.
Oh, and again, at a developer conference, that is huge because it is so much easier to develop for the same for one operating system.
But that was also the message when they're talking about malware too. They're making the statement to developers that the reasons one of the failures of Android, and it is a genuine failure, is that if everybody is not on the same version of KitKat, that means that it's not just new interface. It's all these great new APIs and features that now, if you write a piece of software that targets the Android marketplace, and it uses KitKat features, then that means that you are now targeting 11% of the user base. Whereas if you write an iOS 7 app and now an iOS 8 app, you will have, what was the number? 80? Was it 89 or 90? Yeah, 89% of everybody. Yeah.
Which is a huge number, and it means a lot for those security patches that keep your phone safe, for app compatibility for developers.
We're going to switch to iOS 8. There's going to be some overlap here with all of these things.
There'll be continuity.
There'll be continuity. Are you installing iOS 8 now?
I have installed.
I know nothing. I signed no agreement. But first, we're really thrilled to have you all here. Ihnatko from the Chicago Sun-Times, Rene Ritchie from iMore.com, and Alex Lindsay from Pixel Corp. MacBreak Weekly discussing what was a very, very interesting morning at WWDC. A little program note. Of course, we don't normally do MacBreak Weekly on Mondays. We won't be doing it tomorrow. Instead, we're going to flip-flop. iPad Today will be on in our spot tomorrow. And Triangulation will be coming up later today, or maybe tomorrow. I don't know. At this point, the schedule's kind of all up in the air. If you're tuning in for This Week in Enterprise Tech, normally at this time, that will be after TN2 Tech News Tonight, about 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern Time on Twitter. Our show today brought to you by LegalZoom.com. Not a law firm. LegalZoom provides self-help services at your specific direction. In my mind, for a lot of the things you might want to do, LegalZoom is better than a law firm. It's certainly a lot more affordable. A lot of the legal work that you want to do is really doesn't require an attorney, just requires answering some questions, and LegalZoom will do that. They'll walk you through the questions, generate the documents you need to file for incorporation, Chapter S or C or LLC. And it'll do that for $99 plus the state filing fees. That is very affordable. If you have a business and you don't have a trademark on your company name or your logo, you probably ought to get one. Also very affordable. And this is not the kind of thing you really need to hire a $350 an hour lawyer for. You can do yourself for $199 for a trademark. If you are, and all sorts of things for starting a business, but also for your home and your life. Last will and testament. Last will and testament starting at $69. A living trust, a living will, a healthcare power of attorney, even a pet protection agreement. You can do all of these online at LegalZoom.com. Now, sometimes it does happen that you need an attorney. LegalZoom also has pre-negotiated flat-rate attorneys in every state. You can read their profiles plus unedited customer reviews, get an idea of who you're hiring, and the price is really right on this. So if you have some questions, you can get those questions answered. This is a great time to join the innovators of the world, the people like Thomas Edison and Henry Ford, who changed the world. Inventors and entrepreneurs are all around us now. It's a booming area, but you've got to use the protections built into law, the incorporations, the trademarks, the patents to protect yourself. Right now, if you go to LegalZoom to celebrate innovation, you'll get a special price on trademark, copyright, or provisional patent applications when you use the offer code MBW at checkout. So make sure you use that offer code MBW at checkout. LegalZoom provides legal help through independent attorneys and self-help services. Again, not a law firm, something a lot better. Visit LegalZoom.com. Use the offer code MBW to save on your legal needs and get access to their network of legal plan attorneys for guidance. Don't put off the things you need to do. Go to LegalZoom.com right now and use the offer code MBW for MacBreak Weekly. You'll get $10 off at checkout and some special pricing on trademark, copyright, or provisional patent applications. LegalZoom.com. All right, we move on to iOS 8. Lots of leaks about iOS 8. We heard about HealthBook. We heard about, what else? HealthBook.
Yeah, well, it ended up being called Health and HealthKit.
And it's called Health and HealthKit. There's no HealthBook. What else is new in iOS 8?
I mean, there was so much stuff. Like when you double-click the home button now, as well as multitasking, you get all your contacts, your frequent contacts at the top.
The favorites, in effect.
Favorites, absolutely.
Yeah. It's not just features, it's also philosophy. The ability that it is now largely extensible, that if you take a picture with the camera and you decide, hey, that would look really good in Waterlog.
This is the big one.
You don't have to save it out, leave this app, go into launch Waterlog. Waterlog can present itself in the form of a photo filter. Tap that and Waterlog will do its magic and then return you right back to iPhoto.
They call this extensions or extensibility.
Yeah.
And it's so deep. It's like so many of the problems that I had been having with iOS, they look like if they're not already solved, they're at least on their way. Again, it's a philosophical change where it's not just that, but one of the problems I was having with Pages was the fact that if I want to use cloud storage, of course, if I use iCloud, that's perfectly fine with Apple, and it's very, very easy. If I want to use something else, it's a nightmare to do it. Now, Dropbox can add itself into Pages, and all these other cloud storage places can serve files to Pages or any other app.
You called this, Rene. You said last week you expected to see this kind of extensibility. This is something Android's done for a while, but it looks like it's much more tightly integrated in iOS and much more capable. Of course, we have to wait and see what developers do with it.
I don't know if it'll be as capable because it is a security model. That was, and they stressed that numerous times, is that you can do a lot of things if you don't care about the stuff that Steve Gibson spoke about, that base level of trust no one security. But it looks like they're maintaining that, which is really, really interesting. They're doing a couple things. So because
this is more than just the handoff that we've had up.
Yeah,
it's not right. It's not open in. It really is. One of the demonstrations they had was extendability of Safari using like Pinterest plugins, and they made a point of you're not launching Pinterest. It was Pinterest. Their developers have designed a little user interface that comes up in Safari when you want to share something on Pinterest. So there's a certain amount of depth to it that goes beyond simply a little
like
little
Windows
box
has
with an
it,
error.
right? Contracts and extensions, and extensions declare functionality that can then be surfaced. It's that whole thing again. Like a couple years ago, they ported XPC over to iOS. They split Springboard into Springboard and Backboard, so you can have headless apps. So these apps are these little bits of interface that can just pop up. Yeah. And the really nice thing is, like, we didn't get default apps. You know, you still can't reset your default apps, but you can do all these other things that people want to do, like Andy, moving waterlog documents back and forth. Or, you know, could one password make a way for me to fill in my pages? Because Or they make a keyboard that lets me fill in.
Yeah.
That
in and of itself was another huge one. The ability to say, you don't like your keyboard? Fine, use a third-party one. We're cool with that now.
Well, one question I have is and I assume that this is the case, that these connections between these apps has to be explicit. So is it that app leaving a hook that says anybody that develops an image filter can fit in here, or does Waterlog need to set up agreements with everybody that's
Waterlog
going to
has
use
to present functionality, and then the other apps can just pull that functionality.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can do you can basically say
OS level support.
Yeah.
I have the ability to serve files off of a cloud service. So if you're an app that deals with files, I'm right here. That sort of stuff.
I think in the camera, this is huge. This is something that Windows Phone does very nicely, where you have a number, they call them lenses. They're really standalone apps that can be embedded in the camera application.
But I'll tell you a little bit of story. I'm tweeting as I'm taking notes, and I said, I made a joke earlier on that just in case it's exciting. Someone asked, did you take a Xanax before this in case it's too exciting? And I said, no, but I did put astronaut diapers on underneath my pants just in case. and there was whatever the previous announcement was, that okay, the astronaut diapers are now at 97%. And then like that's when they said, oh, by the way, we're also introducing APIs that allow third-party apps to have full manual control of the camera. And I said, okay, now they're overflowing. Sorry, event staff.
No, but that's a big deal because it means you can have Instagram in your iOS app.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
And vice versa. The new Photos app allows you to put filters in any other
The
app.
Cam can declare their filters to any photo editing app now.
Well, and they didn't really get into. They said there was new SDKs for the camera, but did they really? They didn't. They just kind of said
Manual controls.
So
But
there's
that's all they have to say.
complete manual
And
control
it wasn't, again, they didn't waffle. It says full manual control of the camera system.
Why does that get your diapers full?
That's huge because Apple has equally one of the two greatest cameras you can get on any mobile device. But the shame of the thing is that you can't simply say, "Look, camera,
Yeah, do this.
It's my kid. He's running around. If you use a long, I don't care why you want to use a long shutter speed. If you do, you will screw up the photo. Please don't do that."
Right.
So now you can just simply. I'm thinking more about a third-party app that simply says you're now in active kid mode. I will make all these smart decisions to make sure there's a slow shutter speed. And then there are people who are really using iPhones for serious photography. They're not using it to shoot a wedding, but they are people who like photos. Somewhere inside their house, they've got a really nice camera. They just don't happen to have it with them, and they know that the problem with the things that separate phone cameras from quote real cameras right now is the thing that there is still that randomness. There is still the thing where you hold it up and you know that either you will get a photo or you will not get a photo. If you don't get the photo, why try a third time? Because this is a situation in which a phone cannot take a good picture. And it's not it's usually because of the firmware or the software. It's not because of the lens and the imager. So if Apple simply says that we are willing to let humans who have smarter brains or more interest in in alternative imaging to create a solution for this, we'll let them do that now. You don't have to give up now with an iPhone. There's always going to be another answer available to you.
You mix that with that nice Nokia engineer they brought over a couple weeks ago, and suddenly you have a lot of really good camera stuff.
It's pretty nice.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I think some people are listening to some other people inside there. I don't know.
Siri, you could say, "Hey, Siri." It's funny because I always do that anyway, but now it actually does something. This is the M7 again, listening.
I don't know if it's the M7. The M7 just does motion co-processing, but it's obviously some form of low-power listening. And Siri, good night. Turns off all your stuff.
Yeah.
You say, "Siri, hey Siri, good night."
Yeah, they did that in the demo with iOS with the HomeKit. You can set up all the devices, the automated devices.
All the lights
in
go
your home.
off, and then does the phone stop ringing until 7 a.m.?
The good night thing it turns off your lights. It makes sure your garage door is closed.
Yeah, but does the phone stop ringing?
Oh no, there's no bedside mode yet. We're not animals.
A minor detail. Okay.
Shazam song recognition. You can purchase iTunes content, streaming voice recognition.
This is all by voice.
Yeah.
All by voice.
Hey Siri,
that's
what is
great.
this song? And it will tell you.
Right.
Well, and I think when we look at the home automation, when we look at a lot of those things coming down, and eventually upgrades to Apple TV, other things like that, I think that the idea that you're in your house and you're making all these calls without having any, I mean, this is just setting us up, whether it's a watch or an Apple TV or whatever. And I don't mean the screen TV, even just a little one, where we're going to be able to interact with our house at a whole different level, than we have in the past. And Apple is really one of the only companies, not the only company, but one of the only companies that could pull all this stuff together and make it work. Now, they've laid down the gauntlet. They have to perform in the next year because everyone now is going to try to figure out that process because they'll lose it. If people don't get it in the next 24 months, if people don't move very quickly, Apple will own this space.
Well, headless apps, I mean, if you can take a phone call on your Mac, you could take your phone call anywhere. I mean, once you can start moving stuff between your devices. Well, not just devices, but anything that may not have an interface on it.
Yeah.
A small device.
And it underscores the long-standing impression of Siri as a mini application platform, not just simply a way to not have to use a keyboard.
I mean, and imagine being anywhere in your house and just say, "Call Leo." Hey Siri, call Leo.
Like, then you have to run to your lamp because that's where the microphone is.
But the amazing thing is, like, we've had interfaces replaced before. Like, we went from the punch cards to the command line to the GUI. Now we're getting parallel interfaces because Siri doesn't replace the UI. It just sits next to it. Spotlight doesn't replace the UI. It's just another way of interfacing with the computer.
Yeah. I was thinking on the way over here again that that was another indication of how much meat there was in this presentation. The fact that they added all these really nice features to Siri, and it was one slide, and they put maybe a minute on it before motoring on to something else.
Incidentally, the keynote is up on Apple's site if you want to watch it again. We also have a special 202 where you can watch it with us talking over it. Mike Elgin, Alex Lindsay, Sarah Lane, and myself. You get your choice. You can watch it either way. But I think it was pretty clear as we watched. We were very excited about what was going on. And it was clear also that the developers in the audience were excited. Something a little different, by the way. It looked like Apple did not stack its own staff in the first few rows. They were scattered throughout the auditorium. That was my impression on the stream. Was it actually the case?
I don't know. I was only aware of it when they did the traditional, everybody who works for Apple would stand up and receive your applause. Right.
I think they came in with the press because they were all looking for seats at the same time.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that's unusual.
As usual, the press were had a section to the left. The middle section was employees and VIPs, or just
employees and VIPs, I think.
All right.
And it was like someone said clearly this was a developer's keynote at a developers conference for developers, which hasn't happened in a long time.
Let's say that again and again and again. Yeah. Notifications. You can respond directly to notifications in the notifications view and lock screen.
Hallelujah! Interactive notifications.
That's something.
And not just like they had SMS. They showed off Facebook.
Yeah.
They showed off, and I don't know if they have a plugin architecture, but they showed off quite a few different apps.
You can bid on eBay items.
Yeah,
like
where it will give you that alert. Then you have the ability. It's actionable alerts.
Add third-party widgets.
Yeah, exactly. You can broadcast new functionality inside it if you're a developer. They even, I could be wrong. This is one of the things I need to go back on, but I got the impression from the Spotlight demonstrations that they're saying that if a developer wants to write an app whose chief functionality is to exist inside Spotlight and persistently tell you what the stock prices or whatever are, people are free to do that. They don't necessarily have to write a big stock app and then simply wait for people to.
Well, that was a big question, and Gruber was talking about that after the show. It's like, in keyboards, how are we going to be delivered keyboards? Do they get an app because people are used to deleting an app?
Right.
Do they end up being a settings panel? These are, again, headless apps now, which is the interesting thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll find out. Yeah. Keyboards is great. Of course, they did not change the messed up uppercase keyboard. However, they at least allow you to install swipe. And
my entire attitude on that subject is so different right now because it used to be like these death by 1,000. Well, no, I'm saying my problems with the keyboard were a death by 1,000 cuts, where I can talk about, oh man, you won't even show me. I can't. It's not even clear that uppercase is locked up because I'm also complaining that there's no autocomplete, there's no swipe, there's no this, there's no that. Now it's like that is the least thing I can complain about. Now that they've done so many things.
And prediction, not merely a T9 style single word prediction, but phrase prediction.
But didn't it remind you of iOS 2 or iOS 8 where Forstall went up there and went, done, 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 like he's throwing cards off the deck?
Yeah.
That's, and I really want to I'm sure that there are a lot of people saying, oh, yeah, that's a nice feature that I've had on my Android phone for 2 years.
Well, and that's true.
It's technically true, but really, this is a stew of. I don't feel like they're just simply checking off things that have been on the whiteboard for a long time. I really feel as though they've added ingredients to a stew. It really feels like part of a total new thing, as opposed to, okay, fine, whiners, we'll give you this thing that we don't.
It feels
like
like a holistic system,
right?
Not just tacked on.
And it is true. It's a great feature that we've waited too long to get, but now that we have it. Based solely on having watched a live demo of it, I need to stress, it looks like I don't have any worries about this going into actually going hands-on with the demo.
Well, we should underscore, of course, all of this is promised. We don't know what will be delivered, the quality of it, or even if these features will be delivered at all.
But Apple's really good at that. They're
pretty good. They don't promise
iCloud is really the only feature that I think they've ever announced where they absolutely just kick themselves in their own heads with it.
Right.
So everything. So I'm willing to say that's an aberration. I really have high hopes for iOS 8.
And I will give you, Andy, that it's hard not to say, well, gosh, I've had swipe on Android for years. It feels more like this is not merely adding that feature, but an entire rethinking of how iOS treats third parties.
It was supposed
in a way that's secure and yet extensible.
And there were rumors that this was going to happen last year, and it just didn't show up in the keynote. So who knows how long it takes to get this stuff right according to them.
I really have to say something that's this out there. If Apple comes out with a large screen iPhone, I'm at a loss for why I want to stick with Android. because I feel as though they have. I feel as survey says. I was thinking to myself. I tweeted this out that it's almost the subtext of this keynote is, Andy, please switch back to iOS.
Come home, Andy.
We read what you wrote last year. We have basically given you everything that you wish that iOS had.
I'm actually with you. And it comes back to this whole ecosystem promise, the idea of home automation, which we're going to talk a little bit about.
I don't care about that.
But all of it goes together.
That's a Samsung feature.
Continuity, home automation, all of it goes together. If the iPhone 6 has a bigger screen, and let's not forget, we're going to get to this too, fingerprint. If my bank is using fingerprint recognition for authentication, all of this does push you back into the Apple ecosystem. If you're only using a part of it, as I am, the Macintosh and the iPad, it really pushes you back into it. The beauty of a full ecosystem, because you get so much more.
They want to give you a great experience.
They give you a great experience. Let's talk about HealthKit. I almost called it HeathKit. This is the what we call
It's a great blood pressure cuff, but you have to assemble it yourself.
You got a soldering iron in 152 minutes. So this is an app for tracking personal health, but also aggregating fitness data from a variety of other devices and apps.
They had a nice semi-demonstration quote from
the Mayo Clinic.
Basically talking about a scenario in which, like, you have someone who has ongoing health issues, who's been simply told that we want you to take your blood pressure twice a day. That because the HealthKit has the ability to assess all of this information at once, it can basically let the Mayo Clinic know, or a doctor know, that this person is not sick right now, but they're on a bad trend, so we need to call and have her come in for an appointment right now.
It's interesting that there wasn't even the slightest hint of, and we may have some devices that will work with this down the road. There was nothing like that.
There's already some devices.
I'm sure they want no part of that either.
Well, but there's also why things I think makes a
there's
blood
lots
pressure.
of them.
But I mean,
they showed Runkeeper, they showed Nike Plus. I mean, of course, there's lots.
There's those, but I think that when you
that
talk
was
about
a Fitbit picture there, right?
But when you talk about the health
Nike,
ones,
not a Nike field band.
When Nike stopped, I think they're stopping making the field band.
Well, that's a disputed fact. We don't know. Yeah, Nike says not. But of course, we shouldn't forget Tim Cook's on the Nike board. But they did show a Fitbit Flex, didn't they?
Yeah. I wonder. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that I think this does create an explosion for those kinds of features, like whether it's a blood pressure or other things. If there are things that I choose to share with my doctor, and I have a health problem, of constantly being able to test those things, my weight, my blood pressure.
My doctor wants me to take my blood pressure twice a day and write it down and email it to him.
And in this case, you just do it. You just do it. And then
not merely Mayo Clinic, but a number of other hospitals signing up.
One of the big attractions is that it makes these products so much easier for companies to build. Where, okay, great, you've built a digital pressure cuff that's very, very easy to use. Now you have to contract out a piece of software for people to use it. Then you have to contract an interface. Now all they have to do is simply say, here's HealthKit, work with iPhone, great, we're done, ship it. And if we see this category flourish, where people can, it's every single doctor you talk to, every single researcher you talk to says that if you can catch a cancer, if you can catch a long-standing disease in the first stages of it, it becomes a come on in, we'll give you a shot, we'll go.
And with the growing market of 55 and above,
I'm being facetious.
This is a big market.
That would be nice.
But the ability to say that we're going to really tell you to change your diet this way, and that will avoid 3 years from now having to come in and sign a whole bunch of papers and then go into the night.
Well, it answers that question, why should I get an iPhone? And you can give someone a real answer to that with a lot of stuff they announced today.
Yeah.
Like
bigger screen solves the problem.
I'm concerned with saving your life, honey. That's why I bought myself that new iPad and let you have my iPad 3.
It's for you. I'm doing it for you.
If you were taken for me, I don't even want to consider that. Let's just buy it.
Home automation. It wasn't. There were a lot of questions raised, and not a lot of answers provided. They implied there would be a unique Apple protocol. How this would interoperate with existing, I don't know. Yeah,
there wasn't much information yet, but it's called HealthKit, which means it's a developer-facing thing, and that's good because if it was just made for iPhone program, then it might just be a chip, that says, or a seal. It says, yes, you made this and you passed our test. This sounds like they're giving developers tools that will make the stuff all work better. And my favorite thing was when they said you could pick up Siri and say good night, and it will close your garage door, turn off your lights, turn off your music.
Well, and one of the interesting things about it is that if you're creating a kit that the developers can write to and the hardware manufacturers can write to, it means that I can write something that will eventually work with a Whirlpool X, Y, and Z. So there can be multiple apps so there's a lot of creativity.
A Japanese toilet.
I didn't want to mention that, but I think that would be great.
I don't want Siri on a toilet. I don't have a conversation with a device I'm about to do something horrible.
Siri, you understand, I already have a controller for the toilet, but it's not my phone, which oftentimes
I have one.
of
It's
the
called a little
positions.
lever that goes like this.
Siri bidet.
Yeah, exactly.
Siri, a little bit to the left. There you go. We're getting to a weird area.
Hey, Siri.
So anyway, so but I think that allowing the opportunity here is to create a safe way, so the manufacturers don't have to. You don't have to develop a relationship with Whirlpool or Panasonic or whatever that's building the pieces, or Philips. You're developing an app that has the calls, and that hardware is coming back that has those calls, and I think you end up with all kinds of opportunities for developers and opportunity for hardware manufacturers, because the hardware manufacturers over and over and over again have proven that they are incapable of building interfaces that are useful at all. And so the thing is just forget it. Just leave it blank.
Well, all right, I'm going to now put a little dark cloud over you, because we've been very excited and positive. Can Apple? This is all promise. This is all pie in the sky at this point.
Well, the betas came out today, though.
But can Apple make this work, and will people adopt it? I mean, can it really happen, or is this just yet another exciting feature that never gets
I think we can say that there are two different categories of things that were announced today. One are things that are completely within Apple's control, and Apple is master of their own destiny. When it comes to the idea of this kind of app sharing, when it comes to the idea of iCloud Drive, they own it, they manage it, they control it. I think they can absolutely deliver on that. There are the other categories of things like HealthKit, of things like health, where clearly they're not saying that this is our move towards the health market. They're simply saying we're going to create this possibility. It costs us very, very little to maintain this, and so if people use it, that's fine. If people don't use it, we haven't lost anything at all.
iBeacon is an example.
Well, there's that old
the ladder. No,
but iBeacon is moving quickly. I mean, it's quiet.
But it's not fully Apple's to control.
Well, Apple
cast the iBeacon upon the waters.
I think Apple is a little bit more involved in promoting iBeacon, because they know that this is a way to project the iPhone's influence into the real world. I wrote 2,000 words about this on the plane on Sunday. I think that part of Apple's future strategy, or future desires for itself, is to make sure that you are always walking inside a world of Apple, and if you have an iPhone, all these things that are in the world are exposed to you, because now you're near iBeacons. Now you're using this. Now your stove that was working perfectly fine. Hey, by the way, there's this really cool sous vide interface, or sous vide style interface that will maintain a cooking temperature, and that only is available. It's like they live with those glasses only. Instead of seeing skull-faced aliens, you're seeing I
heard a developer talk about iBeacon, because a lot of developers are only just getting their hands on them now. Like, they were announced last year, but they're just getting them and working with them. And the stuff that they're talking about, if even half of it becomes true, we're going to be living in an entirely different world of mobile devices.
Yeah, so some developer was talking to me about this app that he wrote, that he puts the tag on his luggage, and he can just go get a soda, but now this phone tells, oh, by the way, your luggage is now on the luggage carousel, go and get it.
Well, I hate to cast myself in this role, but I'm going to have to start becoming the negative,
curmudgeon.
The naysayer, the curmudgeon here. I feel like there's a little irrational exuberance here. I too am carried away by this, but none of this is actually.
Well, there's still questions, though, too, Leo. Like, hey, Siri, how does that work? Because
does it deplete the battery?
Well, no, but they said when you go in your car and plug it in, you can say, hey, Siri.
Right.
So does that mean it only works in a car when you're plugged in? Does it only work when you're plugged in? Is it always listening the way an Xbox One is always listening? I have tons of questions about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This was, like Andy said, stuff was on that screen for like a blipfert. It's like for a second.
Yeah, including compatibility of iOS 8 with other devices. It's like, it only takes me maybe 1 second to lift up my, especially at the end of the keynote, there's, you're seeing things that have lots and lots of text on them, so I take a picture of them so I can refer to them later, like I'm doing right now. Yep. And so, okay, here's a compatibility list. By the time I had my camera up, it was gone. And so I was talking to people later on who said that, okay, I saw iPad 2 on that list. I did not see iPad 3 on that list. The earliest iPhone I saw was iPhone 4S, and I'm going to have to go to the videotape.
No, in fact, you're right. It didn't go past iPhone 4S. Yeah. It did show the iPad 2. I did not see iPad 3. That doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah,
but it did go back.
But it's like, again, just like boom. They could. It
was quick.
Either it was in the last 15 or 20 minutes. So maybe they realized we really have to cut this off at noon. So we're not going to linger. But then again, it was.
Well, here from
yes, I have permission to be here. Here's my card.
Dan Seifert writing on The Verge, 8 features on iOS Apple didn't talk about. The beta is now out, so people are starting to look at this. Wi-Fi calling apparently is now built into iOS 8. Carriers that want to support it, like T-Mobile, will be able to turn that
Battery
on.
shaming apparently is in iOS.
Battery shaming. You can look app by app and see which app is killing your battery.
Hello, Skype.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And by the way, Andy, the slide that you were talking about, this is a good example of that slide. This is from Bradley Chambers. If you just kind of try to read that, you're going to have about 3 seconds to see everything that's in there.
Yeah.
That's every feature. Just so you know, speak screen Shazam with Siri, FaceTime call waiting. FaceTime call waiting. That's an interesting idea. So you're on a FaceTime call, and it goes...
Yeah, I would still love FaceTime conference calling on an iPad.
That's interesting. Travel time notifications. This is something that Google now does, but we
didn't see Maps, come to think of it.
Yeah.
No Maps, no transit.
They did have as part of an early demonstration of something else on the desktop. As they're showing off the interface, I think they also, again, I have to go back to the videotape to check it, but I remember thinking, oh, that's new. That's not something I've seen before.
We know we have many blind listeners. They will be very happy to know that there's a Braille keyboard in iOS 8 with direct 6 dot input. I'm not sure. I don't know what that means, but apparently that's very important, and it will be a big improvement for blind listeners. iOS has always been really great for vision-impaired users, but this is something that has not been there before.
That's another great thing. Apple doesn't get enough press for how they've made they made a device that no matter what problems you have in terms of your vision, your hearing, your cognitive abilities, this is the most capable device for everybody out there.
They did announce a new Photos app on iOS, but also a new Photos app on desktop. And it sounded like this was to replace iPhoto. It will be available next year, not with Mavericks. Or, I'm sorry, Yosemite.
I think it's part of consistency across all platforms, especially something with photos where you just want to show people your favorite photos from elsewhere. The other cool thing they were doing where they now have new image enhancement systems. So it's technically a brightness tool, but it's not just simply doing, okay, add +10 to the brightness level of this image. It's making adjustments to the color, the saturation, the intensity levels to say he wants it brighter, but he doesn't want it to look like crap. How do we do that?
I have to say, just if they have a bigger screen and a keyboard, I can replace the keyboard. That's all it's going to take for me.
Welcome home, Leo.
I might be back, especially, and this was another announcement, they've opened up the fingerprint reader, Touch ID, and if they make that open and banks and Amazon and PayPal start using Touch ID as maybe second-factor authentication, this is huge, and would be a very compelling reason to move back to iOS, right?
Yeah. That was a little bit surprising to me. We didn't see anything about Touch ID on Macs. But if they did that, that would indicate a new hardware feature. So maybe they would...
It would need some sort of secure enclave. It would need a lot of...
I would guess that when they release new laptops that...
New iPads, for sure.
And new iPads and maybe even new desktops, there could be a keyboard or a new trackpad that has Touch ID capability. Perhaps you touch the screen.
Yeah. But getting back to what we're talking about continuity, it really does make me want to rethink how they're positioning the iPad now. It's an emphatic underscoring of the idea that we believe that iPads are for one thing, laptops are for another thing. We just want to make these two work as big as possible. But we don't want to blur the lines between those two.
Right.
Well, and I think when you look at continuity and Touch ID, the other option is you can just be sitting there on your computer and touch your phone.
Your desktop can ask your phone, please authenticate this user, and say, yep, he's good. Go ahead.
Bluetooth trusted device. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, this was a developers conference, and there was some very big news for developers. 4,000 new APIs, anyone? Holy cow. We'll talk about that. We've got picks of the week coming up. And the question engine. Why don't we do some questions from the question engine?
We should. There's over 340 questions. we got a whole other show.
I don't want to do the world's longest MacBreak Weekly, but maybe we'll do a little.
Everybody's question does not get answered. We'll get a T-shirt.
Yeah. No.
That was sarcastic. I don't have the authority to grant T-shirts.
No mention of the three letters NFC. No. I don't think Apple's ever going NFC.
No, I think they moved on.
Yeah.
Bluetooth LE.
Bluetooth LE is where it is, and Touch ID. Our show today brought to you by Squarespace.com, an all-in-one platform for hosting your next website. Hosting, but plus the best software in the world. On top of it, and the two so tightly integrated that it's a seamless experience. Where does this sound familiar? Squarespace sites never go down. Squarespace sites are always secure. The software is kept up to date automatically. And they're constantly improving the platform, and you don't have to install the new version. It just happens. New features, new designs, better support. If you go there right now and click the Get Started button, you'll start with 25 gorgeous designer templates. Now, you might say, 25, that's hardly enough, but here's the point. Pick any one of them, and you'll see sites designed with that template. Each of them is a unique and special little snowflake. No two Squarespace sites look the same because you put your personality, you pour your personality into it. You don't have to be a programmer or a designer to do that. You just need to be able to click, drag, drop. You can add capabilities like social media but put all your social media content in there, images. Every site is mobile responsive. That means it works great no matter what size screen you're looking at it. In fact, when you put an image in your Squarespace site, it automatically creates 9 different thumbnails, so it'll fit every size screen. Reflows automatically. Each template now has e-commerce, which means you can accept donations, even with an $8 a month plan, nonprofits, cash wedding registries, school fund drives. Of course, they've got great apps, too, for iPhone and iPad. The mobile-ready apps include Metric and Blog. The Metric lets you check site stats like page views, unique visitors, social media followers. Blog allows you to not only update your content, but monitor comments on the go. Everything just so gorgeous. It includes the hosting, as little as $8 a month. And when you register for a year, you get a free domain name, too. But it will cost you nothing to try it. Just go to squarespace.com. You don't need a credit card. Just click the Get Started button and start building your website. After you play with it for a little bit, if you want to sign up, make sure you use our offer code MacBreak. We'll get you 10% off, whether it's the $8 plan or the $24 everything you can eat plan. It's a great deal for hosting, software, and 10% off when you use the offer code MacBreak. Squarespace.com. 4 Webby Awards this year. Best support ever. Great design. All right.
Oh, Leo, apparently T-Mobile has confirmed Wi-Fi calling for the iPhone.
Wi-Fi calling. That's exciting.
They're going to support it.
I'm not a big fan, but you know, if you're in Wi-Fi a lot, which almost everybody is, it does save you money.
Now that minutes don't count, they're not making any money on those calls. They may as well say, have a great quality call with no load on our server. We are first in line to help that. So developers, of course, the audience for this. None of us are actual developers, so maybe we're not the right people to talk to in this respect. But I think the first thing I saw was 4,000 new APIs, which if I'm a developer, that means 4,000 new APIs I have to learn. Isn't it like usually it's like 200 new APIs on the slide? And yet, given the breadth and the variety of things that Apple's adding, both to the desktop and iOS, this doesn't sound like an unusually large number. This sounds about right.
Yeah, were these? I think these were the iOS.
That was just iOS. Yeah. Oy. You got some. You got some.
That's some reading to
do. I immediately downloaded the new Swift programming manual. That's another thing they talked about, is that they are going to update Xcode to Xcode 6. I think arguably one of the best development tools on any platform, and it's given away free for everybody who owns OS 10. Xcode is spectacular. But it's always relied upon Objective-C, a language that Apple inherited from Next and Next Step. The Objective-C code, as we learned in between shows, we kind of went through the Swift language with Robin, who's visiting from Lockheed Martin. He's a programmer, a Python advocate, one of the guys who brought Python to NASA. And we were talking through the language definition. And one of the things that they were able to do is kind of leave behind the legacy features of Objective-C, the stuff that tipped its hat to C, and just to really create a modern programming.
That was an amazing thing. It was Apple basically walked on stage and just dropped the mic when it came to new languages, because this is something like someone like John Siracusa has been complaining about Copeland, 20 whatever, 20 dot star forever, and everyone's like, we hope Apple is secretly working on a new language, and they were.
Yeah, the direct quote is that we decided, what if we did Objective-C without the C?
Yeah.
And, having looked at it, it's an interesting language. It is obviously very modern and has a lot of the features that modern languages need. Instead of garbage collection, which is a feature of Java, it uses a reference counting, ARC, A-R-C, automatic reference count, to release, to deallocate memory, and that's considered more modern and faster. They described in great detail the speed improvements, even over Objective-C. So they showed Python, no accident, it's very Pythonic in the way you use the language. But then they showed Objective-C, which is ostensibly the fastest way to program on the Macintosh. And it was but several times faster than Objective-C.
And this is all, like, there's Chris Latner who was on stage demonstrating it. He was the guy behind LLVM, the lower level virtual machine stuff. And he went to Apple. He's been working there. He's now head of developer tools. Genius. There's a couple guys genius in programming. Absolute genius. And the stuff they're doing with this is just amazing. And again, like, all behind the scenes. And it just works in Xcode. Like, you can compile your Objective-C, you can compile your Swift.
You can intermingle.
Yeah.
One of the things that Robin explained to me is that the low-level virtual machine, or LLVM, is something now all the code goes to. It's what's running your Objective-C code, as well as your Swift code.
Replace GCC.
It's very fast. But it is a virtual machine. It is not native code that you're writing, and even in an Objective-C.
Yeah, and that showed off one of the nicest one of the most interesting features of it, which is that as you're writing code, it can show you the results of that code, and you can actually have watch on variables. I mean, in layman's terms, it seems to allow you to write software the way that a normal person would conceive of a piece of software, as opposed to a programmer, where a programmer really has to keep the entire flow of the program and the entire structure in their head at once, because they can't really think back to what does this thing do and what happens if I change that.
It's also of great use for teaching, and I think this is maybe the stealth reason for this, is to get schools to start using Swift in school, because one of the things I liked about Python, we always recommended Python for beginners, and to learn how to program, is it had an active interpreter. You could try a statement, see what the result would be. You can do that with Swift. You can even do it in a graphical way.
Well, and I think that it should not, like we talk about this a lot when we're talking about video scopes, for instance. When you see what a camera is doing while you're working on it, your understanding of that camera and what you're doing with it changes dramatically. The real time I'm doing something and seeing it react changes your understanding of that parameter. And I think that is one of the things that's going to be very valuable here, is being able to make small changes and immediately see what that is, rather than waiting for compile, waiting for all the other things that you have to do.
The interesting thing is, even though they're using LLVM, they're still getting faster than Objective-C using LLVM. And by the way, a clarification, the chat room's reminding me, or clarifying, that it is a virtual, let me get this language straight. It does end up being assembler.
It is native code.
It's native code, but you're writing to a virtual machine. It's a compiler target, not a runtime. That's
why I think it's important to clarify that. Especially the demo where they make here's an easy way to make a little balloon that goes around the screen and can be shot at by cartoon cannons. I don't, if it turns out to be an easier to use programming language, I think it really is about how there are people that really can't be trained to write a serious piece of software, just like there are people who can't be necessarily trained late in life to be animators. You have to think in terms of, here is the little puppet, I can see the entire motion of the puppet, even though it's going to take me 2 days to do it. You can't learn that, you have to acquire that. But this is a way that you can really interact with this thing as you're building it and make something a little bit pretty complicated.
I want to see what Gene McDonald does with App Camp for Girls with this, for example, because it makes it just so much more accessible to everybody.
I think this would be a great teaching language, but remember, it is Apple specific, at least right now.
But it really does make the tent a lot bigger. I think with now that Apple kind of stops boasting about the number of apps that are available for it, they really want to foster the sort of apps that they want to put in a commercial, because that's where the strength of the App Store is. These apps that are beautiful, they're pretty, even though they do just one thing, they do something spectacular that you wish you had thought of, because it is such an elegant solution to a real-world problem. And when you have a programming language that's not as intimidating as Objective-C, that means that you're tapping into the creativity of a much larger range of developers out there. So in the most positive outcome I can think of for this, and of course we're talking about information that is now exactly 3 hours old, the most positive output is that you're now getting people who instead of having a transitory thought of, wouldn't it be nice if I had an app that did this, and letting that go, they say, well, how hard would it be to do that? And they download this book and say, actually, not hard at all. I think I'll work on this.
The good news is the other benefit to Swift is it's designed to be a safe programming language. It eliminates a lot of things that can cause problems for programmers, a lot of issues that traps programmers fall into. So it's a good step towards more.
And like you said,
code,
people have to learn new habits, though.
Right. Yeah, we went through it was quite interesting, actually, going through the manual. It's available on iBooks. We went through about 800 pages in an hour and a half. And I apologize to anybody who sat down with me and Robin went through it. But I think it was very interesting.
You're using Clayton's app to read.
Yeah, read quick. Yeah. So you can download it now. Xcode 6 Beta is available if you're a registered developer, $99 to do that. And
but you can submit apps to the App Store with Swift on day one, they said. So.
Right. By the way, the App Store changed significantly as well. In fact, they didn't. I wish they'd had demos. They don't have demos of apps, but you can at least have a movie.
Which makes sense, because previously on the App Store, you could download a sample chapter of a book. You could watch a trailer to a movie. Right. You could listen to 90 seconds of audio. When it came to an app, you could look at a screenshot. Yeah. And now at least you can look at a moving screenshot.
Right.
And now you can do things like bundling, do app bundles.
The developers got very excited about that. The notion you could have one low price for 4 apps or whatever.
Right. And there's so many things that we forget that because so much consumer-focused news happens during WWDC, we forget that this really is the start of a week's worth of 1,000 Apple engineers having conversations with developers for an entire week. And so Tim actually had to interrupt during reading this list. Like, yeah, I do read your emails.
Right.
And the amazing thing too is they have an app. They have an editor's choice badge on apps now. So suddenly, Apple has an amazing App Store editorial team, and suddenly making an app that impresses them gets you some better recognition.
That team gets a lot more clout. Where they're organizing searches.
But impressing them, like making an app that's not just garbage, but making an app that's good enough to impress Apple's editorial staff suddenly means something.
Yeah, for if you were a pick of the week, you were a pick of a week for that week. But now you can put the badge on there and be that way, forever. And
there's a new Explore tab. You can see trending searches, related searches when you search for a certain thing. It's just things that help, because now they realize that if they keep saying exactly how many hundreds of millions of apps that are on the App Store, that will make the App Store start to look bad rather than good. So now they're going to start to see tell people and developers, here's how easy it is for a user to translate an interest in making their phone do something to an app that they've bought that does that thing.
Hey, speaking of demos, what do you think of the Zen Garden? They were demonstrating this new layer in between your code and the processor. Traditionally, you'd use OpenGL for 3D graphics. They said no more OpenGL. We're going to use Metal, which allows you to program
straight to the metal.
Sort of straight to the metal. It sounds like
it's a smaller gap between you and the metal.
It was this big instead of that big. I don't know what that means, but I was very impressed with the epic demonstration of the Zen.
So you
Garden.
have Metal.
It's not Infinite Blade 3, but what the hell? It's,
but it's running on iOS, and that's the big deal.
So it is Infinity Blade. It's better than Infinity Blade, and it's running on iOS.
Yeah.
And it's
and again they kept on saying console level graphics over and over and over again.
But stuff that they brought their console engine over.
Right, exactly. No, without modifications. And you're seeing demonstrations that are like, and so you paint this brush and you're painting cherry blossoms on the tree, and you put a gust of wind, and now we have 100,000 cherry blossoms. Now this thing turns into butterflies. What if we added hundreds of other butterflies?
It's like an Old Spice ad.
And it's not just
but it was demonstrating physics engines, particle engines, the kinds of things hardcore game programmers expect on a desktop platform. Putting that on iOS really is significant.
And it really makes me think about the next generation Apple TV strictly as a game platform, not as just, we can AirPlay games off of your iOS device. It's like, no, they're putting.
Could you make a $100 Apple
firepower
TV with an A7 in it?
I think so. But I mean, the thing is though that now they're putting. What you could see during that keynote, we were looking at a huge 4K display, one of the most expensive display technologies that anybody will ever use in a keynote, and it looked fantastic. And so it's hard to look at that and not think that's kind of overkill for an iPhone screen that's this big, isn't it? Maybe the
Apple
target
TV won't
really
need a display, it won't need a battery, it won't need a bunch of stuff that goes into making the price of the phone higher. But the thing that was amazing too, going back to Swift and the graphics engine, they made SpriteKit better, and they brought SceneKit over from the Mac. So not only can you use that kind of stuff, but it's much easier to make those kind of games now.
And you'll be writing Swift, because Swift is both iOS and OS 10. I'm looking at the blog post from AgileBits, the folks that do 1Password, and they're talking about Touch ID opening up and app extensions and what that means for 1Password. I would guess that they, along with LastPass and the other developers, would be very excited. They don't know. They say this is incredibly exciting. We're looking into the delectable possibilities these features might be able to unlock for 1Password. Might
essentially being able to put passwords into everything by just putting your thumb on your Touch ID is both secure and convenient.
I'm guessing. I don't know how secure that is. I'm guessing. What I'd prefer to see is Touch ID used as a second factor as opposed to a primary factor. So you'd still need to know the password. You still need to enter that, and then you'd confirm it with a thumbprint.
Or at least if you don't want to do that everywhere, having Touch ID work for 1Password, so 1Password is super secure, then you can copy that into your other app. I mean, if security is your first.
Yeah, it just worries me because I'm not convinced that the fingerprint is as strong a password protection as a password.
It's better than a PIN code, nowhere nearly as good as a passcode. There's, I think, 1 in 50,000 people or something has a matching fingerprint.
So that's why it's second factor, not
CSI people can spoof it. I mean, that's your
and I think that also, but I think that you are going to continue to see, as they keep on talking about privacy, there's a lot of places to go with this where the geometry of your face is very is very specific, and you give it enough samples, and along with your thumbprint, along with there's a lot of things.
Bluetooth device on your wrist.
There's a lot of things that start adding me really knowing as and that's very valuable on many levels of starting to really know that the person holding this phone is the person who says who they say they are. You know?
Oh, it's huge, and I agree that people like Agile bits that have a lot to gain from this.
I mean, this is exciting. Realize that they only brought one third party on the stage to show off a technology, and according to the keynote, these people had access to Metal 2 weeks ago, or about 10 days ago.
Epic only had 2 weeks,
right? And so everybody else, and we're talking about people who make the most popular and most important Mac apps out there, they're getting this day one too. And so this is why I think I'm going to be glued to my web browser for the next 3 or 4 days to see as they start to dig deep into this sort of stuff to see what they can do, because I know people that it's almost like a sleepover slumber party. They are up until 4 a.m. going on 3 people, three people on each bed in the hotel room with their laptops out, saying, well, how does that affect how we can do this? Could we actually adapt this infrastructure with this new API? Because it really is Christmas Day with 4,000 packages to open.
Let's do some questions from the question engine.
All right, here we go.
In fact, I should fire it up here so I can show them, right?
Yeah.
All right. bit.ly/ MBW-405er. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, I'm going to hit my buttons here, go to the dashboard.
How long are you ready?
And we have quite a few questions. Yeah. Holy camole. Starting with, shall I read them?
Yeah, go ahead.
The top question from Joseph R. Jones, Park City, Utah. Seems like extensibility should be sufficient for apps like LastPass and 1Password to fill out forms using the same actions functionality that demoed for Bing Translate. What extensibility features are you waiting for from developers? Little blue sky thinking.
I don't know. Realize that when
the 1Password folks said maybe we'll be able to open your doors when you unlock your 1Password vault. Yeah. We can unlock your garage at the same time. That is actually a whole new world for companies like that to say we'll also be the key to your house.
Well, that's the thing is we spent all these years building up the smartphone as a platform, and now that phone can unlock everything. It becomes a platform to unlock everything else around us.
And that's the kind of thing that's going to bring me and Andy back into the iOS.
Yeah. But that is an interesting example. When they talk about extensions, do they really talk about Safari exposing the document object model of the web page to this third party? Because that's what would be required for form autofill for an extension.
And you know, of course, that Apple's going to err on the side of safety and security, so they're going to be very conservative.
I mean, I can't come up with specific examples. All I'm talking about is workflow, where I really think that apps should work more fluidly with each other. And it seems stupid for me to have the mental mindset of I need to leave and stop this app to go to pick up another app, and I have to figure out a way to hand carry this data from one to the other.
I love the idea, though. I have a safe. I open the safe combination, but it still doesn't open. It says, okay, now pull out your iPhone and validate with the fingerprint. Things like that could really be phenomenal. I want to open my garage. A garage door opener is insanely insecure.
Yeah.
I mean, it bothers the hell out of me that if you know my garage door opener number, you can get into my house because I'm not going to lock the garage door. So make that more secure. There seems like a lot of opportunities here.
Well, and I think that also there's a lot of sensitivity that we keep on seeing with when Google does it, is that they're afraid that they're acquiring that information for a bunch of other things, and which doesn't really bother me, but it definitely bothers a lot of people. The idea of having ads on my Nest bothers me.
Yeah, Google said they're not doing that, by the way.
Anyway,
that was just a bad rumor.
But it's nice to have choice because the competition makes both companies better.
That's what I say.
Right,
and if you really care about this stuff, knowing that your fingerprint is not sent by Apple to the cloud where the NSA could get it is going to be reassuring to people.
I'm more keen on the knock-on efforts where the first bank that offers a card that says that we will not allow a transaction to go through until you authenticate through your phone. I would enable that for every single transaction that I do. And I would probably also buy cash for things like sodas at gas stations, because I would get old real fast. But the knowledge that any purchase over $5 has to be second factor authenticated. This is not something that they would do on their own, but once Apple creates an infrastructure for that, great.
Well, and again, a lot of these extra passwords and so on and so forth, being able to log into YouTube with second part authentication and so on and so forth, all of those things, being able to do all those logins, everything else with that extra without really thinking about it. You're just constantly using that because now it's all part of the ecosystem. I think is going to be once it starts happening, it's going to be everywhere.
Kester Johnson from Trinidad and Tobago, where Apple registers all its new trademarks, by the way. That's not a joke. They're serious.
Yeah, man.
Which update gets you guys most excited from the keynote?
just the extensibility of iOS. I would say it's a tie between the extensibility of iOS and the ability for iOS apps to talk to each other in a more native fashion. Because once again, I will say this again, that if Apple comes out with a large screen iPhone, I will be at a loss for reasons why I need to stick to Android. Yeah. That's all the big things that made the iPhone hard to use. Apple has at least announced a plan for addressing them. Let's see if that actually translates into a finished product. But
Rene, what's exciting to you?
For years, I've been writing these articles, like, I really want to see this in iOS. And every year I write versions of the same article. Like, I want the document picker. I want the interactive notifications. I want the interactive communication. I don't have to write those next year. Yeah. And so it's not one thing, but it's all these little pain points they just absolutely annihilated in one keynote.
Alex, what excites you?
Home automation. I think that if they pull this off, I mean, it changes so many things. By the next CES, we see this huge explosion of integration if they can make that work, and it really changes a lot about our everyday life.
And do you think that'll help also home automation on Android? There'll be more makers wanting to make controllable hardware.
Just depends on how hard or easy it is to integrate. So what Apple's done is given them a package that lets everybody integrate back and forth. I think that if Google doesn't do the same thing very, very quickly and get that penetration, I think the problem is I look at it and I go, well, I can easily develop into an interface that lets me get hooks into all kinds of things, or I can go through all this code. And I think that is going to be, I do think that if Google doesn't make huge steps forward in this within the next 12 to 24 months, and Apple does succeed at all in this area, it's like there'll be nothing left.
I think it might follow the same thing as the velocity of apps, where people want to target the iPhone first. If it's a success, then they will have the money to commission an Android version of it. So if they have a lock set that has become the de facto standard for phone controllable sets, they will have the money to say, okay, it's going to be harder for us to build an Android version of this, but now we want everybody to be able to use this.
And I don't think we're going to see home automation companies committing only to Apple. I think that they're going to build their hubs as something that definitely uses this one protocol, but also has the other protocols that they want to support as well.
I got to agree with all of you. I think all three of those things are huge. But I'm also excited about Swift, and that's just mostly because I collect programming languages, and I'm very intrigued by what Swift can do. And that leads us to our next question from Colin Laney in Canada. Was the Swift language acquired by Apple, or did Apple create it?
My understanding, I know nothing about it. This was a big surprise.
This was something no one had rumored, by the way.
Everyone thought Apple had to do this. Okay, there's been like giant posts on the internet why Apple had to do this. I don't think anyone expected them to do it at this show, but it seems like something developed by Apple's compiler team. Not compiler, but their language.
That's our best guess. They have the guys they have in there are the guys who could do this. Yeah. There is a Swift language that was created at the Argonne National Laboratories that is absolutely not the language that we're seeing.
Also, Swift was the name of the A6 processor, also not related.
Yeah. So my guess, and that's not unusual. Google has its own languages. They have Go and others. It's not unusual to see purpose-built languages. What is unusual is to see a language kind of rethought from the ground up to be more modern, more powerful, more secure. And I think this makes a lot of sense for users. The only thing that's sad about this to me is that it is proprietary, and I would love to see Apple open this up.
Well, you got to think like .NET was initially proprietary, and then Mono came along, and then like the different versions of that came along.
Because of the LLVC, they were able to do Mono, and I think the LLVM may allow Apple to do something similar. What were you laughing at?
No, I'm just reading like friends of mine who are developers, like who are now actually doing what we're doing, which is looking into it, like Rich Siegel saying, cuddled braces, die, die, die.
Well, you know what? No semicolon at the end of every line. That's the kind of thing programmers go, yeah. We did notice that it has a fairly good object-oriented programming model, but not multiple inheritance. Single inheritance, that's a big deal.
No printf 1 star.
But to me, the thing that's most exciting is the interactive debugger. That's what you were seeing. It was a debugger. Right. It looks like it's kind of some sort of magical interpreter, but it was in fact a debugger, which allows you to enter statements, see them on the screen, and to scroll through, to scrub through your program and see stuff. And that's a really great way to learn a language. Xcode I think Xcode has always been great. I've always loved Xcode. In fact, I love the Macintosh Programmers Workshop, which was its predecessor. Apple has always made great tools for developers, and this looks like a really strong tool.
There was a great line from Vicky Murley, who's the former evangelist for Safari, and she said, this looks to me like Web Inspector made for code.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looked like, yeah. thank you for the question. Another question. We're using the question engine right now, and I'll just take the top upvoted questions. Can Apple finally pull off a cohesive and solid iCloud service? That's a question we're all asking. Yeah. Dan in Exeter, Devon, UK. The storage pricing seems very competitive. That's true, and that you can credit Google with that. Google dropped the prices dramatically on Google Drive, and Dropbox did not respond, but now Apple has matched those prices. I suspect that the pressure's on Dropbox to do the same.
Yeah, I mean, now that they haven't made it so punishing to standardize on iCloud, that's the first big step.
It's got to work. Can they make it work?
Again, now that reliability, I think they've got that potential. Functionality,
that's the key.
I've seen from what I've seen and what I've just gotten emails from talking about the functionality of this, it seems to address all the limitations that made iCloud a very, very bad deal, not only for users, but also for many developers, and what it costs in order to support iCloud in an app.
Yeah. Now, it won't change the people who want to eventually go Android or go Windows Phone or go Windows as well, because they're still going to not be able to use iCloud. But for everyone who's the only thing was pain in making iCloud work.
If you want to standardize on iOS and macOS, now you can actually share out files out of iCloud in a way that makes sense for the people. Again, you're not putting your documents in iCloud jail anymore. You can actually see them. You can visit them whenever you want and give them and take them out of that infrastructure whenever you want.
Apple made a big deal about getting it for free. Like you get so much stuff for free now.
Of course, now they're in the business of furnishing Windows Phone apps. Perhaps we'll see an iCloud Drive client for Windows.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, are they doing apps or is it web apps? Like, is it going to be like iWork for iCloud? Is that eventually going to be iTunes for iCloud, Photos for iCloud, and just their cross-platform development will be the web?
I don't know if they're that eager. I mean, again, look at how cleanly they had excised the word Google or any Google trademark from this thing. Which I don't think that means they're spiteful and small, but I do think that they figured that why should we do anything that is a strategic boon for anybody else? If it will help our users to be able to project those features into a Windows Phone device or an Android device, we will do that. If our answer is we want to help you to understand that an iPhone is better than Android, then they'll say, we'll help you to get that iPhone.
Yeah, they didn't say that. They just said it would work on Windows. They never said it would work on Android.
Yeah.
Yeah, iCloud has never worked cross-platform very well. I mean, there's an iCloud client for Windows, but nobody in their right mind would use it. So I don't think there's much incentive for Apple to be cross-platform. Apple's going to be a closed ecosystem. Let them be a closed ecosystem.
Well, that's the thing. Like Andy was mentioning earlier, when you look at something like HealthBook or you look at some of these features, Passbook is fantastic until you get to some of the developer apps who use UI WebView with horrible little web buttons, and it makes for a terrible experience because Apple doesn't control the whole stack.
Right. Well, and every time, no matter, I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we should be cross-platform, we should make this available, but every time you do that, every time you open up a plug-in architecture, some kind of API, you have a bunch of people who complain every time you change it. So so you have to remember that by keeping it closed, by not supporting all those things, it also means that you don't have to support all the little fingers that are tying into it. You can cut them and change them at any point you want, and that also allows not only Apple to be competitive, but for it to be flexible inside of its system.
David W., Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Do you think the Apple TV will be upgraded to a game console with the introduction of Metal? Seems like it would be an obvious upgrade now if they had an app store together with the A7 processor. As you pointed out, Alex, they keep saying the word console. That implies
Christmas.
Living room lean-back experience.
Unless they intend to make an iPad with a 4K display and still have it 12 hours of battery life and sell for $500, I think that's
There's
Christmas.
No question, though, that the iPad and somewhat the iPhone are really the top gaming platforms right now. And they put Nintendo out of business, basically.
This should, if Sony and Microsoft aren't worried about this,
they console. I mean, I don't see Amazon taking over the world with their Fire TV.
But remember, the original, the last generation Apple TV was essentially a single-core iPad 2.
Right.
And now we're going to have iPad 6.
Well, that raises that's the question I asked Andy. Can you make an A7 or A8 based?
Well, I think when the A8 comes
TV
out, the
A7,
will probably, and if they strip it down to make it do exactly what it needs to do for the Apple TV.
Because also realize, again, with an ARM processor, they're not buying a bag full of chips from a distributor. Right. They are designing and building a chip that does exactly what they needed to do. So I think that they can do that.
So you think there's a market for gaming on the TV still?
With your iPhone or iPod Touch as a controller. Or custom controllers,
I see it as something that adds value to Apple TV. Even if their solution has to be, we will have an Apple TV 3 type functionality device for $69. For $129, here's all the other things that this will do, including absolutely wonderful gaming.
And we should point out to those who say, well, you can always AirPlay your phone or pad to the TV. That's not good for gaming. There's too much latency. It's not going to work. Let's do one more because we're getting down to the bottom of the barrel here. A mere 30 upvotes. This is Ryan in Honolulu, Hawaii.
Many gentlemen callers did I have in my day. Why we had to borrow chairs from next door.
Did this WWDC keynote give you confidence that Apple has a clear vision without Steve Jobs in the face of the constant media headlines of doom and gloom?
Oh, yeah.
Is this a race-haunted empires?
There was never a haunted.
Exactly. There's never anything like that.
It was a haunted analogy.
And the people who keep spouting doom and gloom for Apple, we make fun of those people, and for good reason. I mean,
I was one of them that really felt like it was very. I thought that today was a very important day for Apple. This was the day they could go all crazy about Jimmy Iovine and saving the music business and how Beats. They could have gone very wrong here.
But I wonder if they had 10 minutes blocked out or 5 minutes blocked out for Jimmy Iovine. And then they saw him on the Code stage and said, "Yeah, why don't we talk about his programming language instead? We don't want to give him an open mic."
The best thing for me on this whole show, to show where Apple's positioned, is no Phil Schiller, no Eddie Q, no iTunes, no Jimmy Iovine. They didn't need any of that. They didn't need new hardware. They didn't need new devices. Nothing. They could do this on the strength of their
nothing but protein
operating systems and their developers.
And I truly felt like this would be a litmus test for Apple, and they absolutely passed. They did everything right. They opened up the platform somewhat. They expanded it. They added new features that people really want. Now, the question is, can they implement? And we'll find out in the fall when they do finally announce new hardware to go along with this new software. But to me, they did everything right, and that they did show a clear vision. Steve Jobs, home, fingerprint reading. I mean, you can go on and on. A new programming language, continuity, the new look to OS 10. All of this is post Steve Jobs and really shows a clear vision going forward.
Well, and I think that people who are wondering, can Apple keep on growing? And I think these are the seeds. They're not the trees, but they are the seeds of explosive growth. I mean, for Apple, that takes their stock price past 1,000, so on and so forth, over the next 2 or 3 years, if these seeds grow into trees.
So I was
a stock split, I think.
Yeah, 7-way.
Yeah.
As a naysayer and a guy who really was afraid that Apple had lost its way, tentatively, because we have to see the implementation. But tentatively, I'd say that this is a very positive sign in the right.
Last year, we saw Tim Cook's WWDC. It was after his restructuring. It's when Johnny Ive and Craig Federighi came together. They made iOS 7, but it was part 1. And now we've seen Yosemite. This was really part 2 to me of Tim Cook's Apple.
Followed through.
And Craig Federighi, again, flawless presentation. Everything was lined up.
Yeah. Now, I have to say, it's all very proprietary, and I do believe that Apple's building a proprietary ecosystem. I'm not a fan of proprietary. I'd like to see open, but you see the difference between what you can do with open and what you can do with proprietary, and there's certain advantages to proprietary.
Proprietary is only a problem for me when it limits what I want to do. If you have anticipated everything that I want to do and you give me a way to do it, I won't notice that I'm only operating within your instructions because I am actually doing everything I want to do.
By the way, the split will be 7-1 on June 6th. You will have to be a shareholder of record as of today. So quick, buy your Apple stocks if you care. I don't think it makes any difference in the overall value of it. Final question, John Foley, Chicago, Illinois. This is a good one to end with. What, if any, features were not announced that you were hoping they would?
I was hoping to see some nod towards easier multitasking on at least the iPad. Either split screen effect.
Split screen.
We didn't see that at all. But we did see, this is in my notes that I was making as I was typing, you saw little nods towards one of these classic Apple explanations of, no, our competitors will give you tacky split screen. We thought about why do you want split screening, and can we give you a better way of doing that? So for instance, there's a feature they demonstrated in the the iPad version of Mail where how many times you've been typing a reply to something that, oh damn, I need to refer to something else. So I got to cancel this out, put this in Draft, go back to there. Now you have the ability to simply pull that down, re-expose your inbox, look at what you want to look at, and then pull it back up again and put it in that way. So, and there's also ways of where the calendar has now has ways of expressing itself into email, into the Mail app, into other apps when it feels as though, oh, you've just gotten something that refers to this other person who has appointments. I will make sure that function is exposed to you within Mail. It went so fast that I'm really not sure what the procedure, but the impression that I got was that, well, this is a situation in which in iOS 6 or 7, you'd have to get out of Mail, go into Calendar, and then go whoop, 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 whoop. If we write both these apps, we can simply say, he's probably going to want to schedule something. Let's expose a calendar functionality at this point.
That's a nice kind of, that's how multitasking, frankly.
Right. And the one thing that's really important to remember is that traditionally this is part 1 of iOS version. And then when they have the iPhone/iPad event, we get part 2 and there's new features that are specific to that hardware, or they just didn't want to announce ahead of time.
Split screen doesn't make sense on an iPhone. Maybe you save that till you announce a new iPad.
There are things. Remember that Apple will debate internally things up until the horses are about to leave the pen. So it's possible that there's still some features like that are being debated daily about
or just aren't finished yet because they had so much else on their plate for this show.
Yeah.
Anything you thought we should have seen that we didn't see? You were.
I mean, I think that we're probably going to see something more. Since it came out, I've wanted to see the Apple TV opened up, to make it an app. I think it's a small computer. It could be useful for schools. It could be useful at home. There's a lot of things that you could do with it, and I think it's been limited for a long time. I think that there's a good chance that this happens when they update it, because I think there's going to be games. I think there's going to be a lot of other things, and I think that so I can see, hopefully, positive writing on the wall. But I really feel like that's a market that could explode, that just hasn't been given the opportunity yet.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't do OS 1 with Scarlett Johansson as the voice, but other than that, I feel like they've done a good job.
But then they make us all wear those high pants, and who wants that?
In the future, everyone's going to wear high water pants
and mustaches.
Because of global warming, it's too late to undo the effects. We're all going to have to roll up our cuffs.
Roll up your cuffs. Anything that you missed, Rene?
Yeah, I mean, there's little things, and there's always if I got that feature, I'd have to give up one of the other ones that they made because there's no there's an opportunity cost.
One copy.
I mean, I want to see the Apple TV stuff. I want iTunes Extras on Apple TV. I want Print-to-PDF. I mean, there's all sorts of little things that I think have probably been done already, but just haven't had time to be implemented. It's those things. But this is like Andy. I feel like this is the checklist of complaints I've had, and someone went through and went done, 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 done.
Do you think it's likely? I do, that in maybe July or maybe even later this month, Apple will have not an event, but just announce new Mac Minis, some new MacBook Airs, maybe a Retina.
They could drop stuff like that in a press release, like they did with the MacBook Airs.
They don't need an event.
I think Pros could get a speed bump because
I would not be at all surprised to see something like that. In fact, in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a not insignificant announcement about the MacBook Air line, and that wasn't even like an announcement. It was, oh, you have mail. Oh, it's an announcement. There's a price drop in new processor models.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks. Save me a trip.
Could very easily happen.
I do think we see another launch in the fall. I mean, I think that we see
clearly September, October.
I think we're going to be going towards Christmas, and we're going to be. I think that's when we see the Apple TV upgrade. I think that's when we see the iPhones. I think they'll wait till then.
Yeah,
I think that September is the most likely, early September.
You don't want to cloud the iPhone announcement and the iPad announcement. Traditionally, that's what they did in September and October.
Yeah, but they can do that in 2 events. And
there's iPhone, iPhone Music, and then iPad Mac. For the last 2 years, that's the events that they've had.
All right, there was a big story this week that that happened the day after MacBreak Weekly last week that we didn't really get a chance to talk about. Today it was eclipsed by WWDC, but real briefly, let's talk about Beats. The deal wasn't a rumor, it wasn't a false rumor, it was true. Sold for $3 billion, most of that going towards the headphone business. I've seen some interesting speculation that, in fact, Beats was in financial difficulties and that they needed to sell. Only one analyst has said that, but an interesting point of view. I stand by my initial reaction. This is a terrible idea, and I'm shocked that Apple did it. Obviously, it wasn't a false rumor, but it's still a terrible idea.
Tim Cook was not wearing Beats on stage, Leo. If you look closely.
We did see Dre briefly.
Yeah, I was
hear from him.
And not only he called Dre, and Dre made him wait until the third ring to answer.
That is odd.
Boy, that's a baller.
And he did call him doctor.
And he called him doctor.
And he also said, "What time do I show up for work on Monday, sir?"
Yeah. The thing, and you touched on this at Recode. Jimmy Iovine, Eddie Q take the stage. Jimmy Iovine, or no, it was Eddie Q said music is dying. This is so manifestly not true. What's true is that the music industry, as we knew it, is dying. And this seemed to me a music industry bailout bill more than anything else. This is not the kind of... Jimmy Iovine is old school music industry, and I don't think this is the guy you want to bring back. Well, he said we want to bring back the album. Steve Jobs single-handedly killed the album with 99-cent singles. And now we're going to Apple to bring the album back? That doesn't seem like a good thing.
I don't think that's necessarily his motivation. From what he's
his motivation is $3 billion.
But he also remember that.
He and Dre took $205 million out of the $500 million Carlyle deal. $205 million each they took out of that.
And making Tim Cook wait for 3 rings is a baller move.
But here's the thing that gives me a little bit of pause, and this is why when I saw the terms of the deal, I clarified some of my thinking on this. That imagine what it would have taken for Steve Jobs to sell Apple to somebody else, and then then become an employee of that business. That was not his original technology business, and he didn't sell the company. I know that he sold Next to Apple, but he sold them to him. He sold his company back to a company he founded.
For $400 million.
Imagine if he sold Next to a music business, and then became a music industry officer. What would that say? If Jimmy Iovine seemed to do the exact same thing. He walked away from a 25-year career in which he is a legend in that business, not just for making money, but also having the right ideas and being someone that both artists and executives respect. The idea that he's willing to dump out of the music industry business to become an employee at Apple, I think that says to me that he wanted to. I think that says to me that this is about headphones. This is about accessories. This is about a streaming business. This is about his ability to negotiate. But the other big factor is this is about Beats' attitude and opinions about technology and industries, adding to Apple's own experience. I really think that Apple decided to expand their mind by buying Beats as much as acquiring a couple of different
Time
businesses.
will tell, but that's
just guesswork on my part. But that seems to
I
make
can
sense
think
to
of
me.
no reason why this makes any sense. It's not that Apple can't afford to throw away $3 billion on the possibility that there might be
maybe it's an experiment for them. That's not a lot of money for an experiment.
Yeah. And I congratulate Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre for being the happy recipients of this experimental money. But
I think that one of the things though is that the streaming market is very new. It's very small. Regardless of how many people we're talking about in Spotify or whatever, in the grand scheme of things, it's very small. It's still very early, and it's very crude. What Spotify does, what Pandora does, is crude and barely works. And we're very excited about the gruel that we get. And so the thing is there's a lot of opportunity for disruption that these guys have. I don't know whether they're going to actually disrupt things, but there is a lot of opportunity there because the music, the services that we have right now are medium at best, and very ripe to be turned upside down.
I think it was Philip Elmer DeWitt who quoted an analyst who had some fairly negative things to say about this. The Carlyle Group, which is a merger, an M&A group, bought Beats. The impression I got was to save Beats.
Well, to flip it. That's what M&A does.
To flip it. And part of the reason was Beats had mortgaged their IP and their name.
Yes.
To borrow money. Apparently, when they moved from Monster headphones to in-house, the margins went way down. This may not be the salubrious deal that people think it is.
Apple, the margins probably will go way back up.
Well, again, with Apple brings hundreds of millions of credit cards, people who've already bought a lot of music, and they apply that to a streaming service. There's a lot, the thing is that 10 million paying customers of Spotify is a drop in the bucket compared to where it can be. And the thing is for the music industry, it does not pay off to be on Spotify when there's 10 million paying users. It does pay off. The subscription service does pay off when there's 150 million users that are paying. And that's one of the
money quotes that Iovine did during the Code conference, saying that Spotify has 10 million users in the world. That's crazy. There should be 10 million in the U.S. It should be a much bigger market.
It should be 150 to 200 million.
The interesting thing is, the music goes to Eddie Q, the hardware, the headphones goes to Phil Schiller, none of their stuff has global reach yet. None of their stuff has global manufacturing yet. There's a lot of things Apple can do just to leverage the heck out of those brands.
Imagine them on Shark Tank. and Eddie saying, you're doing exactly the wrong model here, because I think that you're doing high markup stuff. You've got no international distribution. I'm out.
I do
I'll
hope
give you $3 billion for 100% of your company.
I do hope that Jimmy Iovine doesn't represent the old school music industry coming into Apple and saying, hey, here's how we got to do it from now on. And I just feel like that's exactly the wrong direction.
I feel like I feel like they wouldn't have made that offer to give him such a prominent spot on the executive team if he had not shown an ability to work with Apple. You don't last long at Apple as an iconoclast.
And he's been working with Apple for a long time, and he is the one. He's part of why why all these deals got done in the first place. And so it's not it's not like they just went to Beats. They've been having an ongoing relationship.
Do those deals follow Beats, or do they stay? Do they leave? In other words, are those not that the streaming music deals are that important, but let's
I think they're very important. I think the streaming music deals are
There's some question about whether they go with Beats.
I've seen different reports.
I've seen completely opposite answers. I don't know what the answer is to that.
But I don't think they have to. They don't. I think that if they don't change the service, I think Apple can own the service as an ownership without making it part of iTunes, and I think that they would retain all those.
Yeah, they're keeping the brand. They're doing a lot of things to have it almost, they're file makering it basically.
Yeah, I can't wait till the fall till we see a Beats branded something to see how they integrate the Apple brand, because there's no short of history with Apple integrating other brands into their own umbrella. I mean, again, there's Siri, there's FileMaker, there's not iTunes, and iTunes is also considered a brand, but it's.
They said they're not doing that.
How so?
Apple said they're going to maintain the Beats brand. They're not going to integrate it.
But I'm saying, would they literally would they treat it as though it's an in-house product, or would they treat it as though something that here's an?
I thought they were very clear that they're going to treat it as a standalone autonomous unit.
They can't monkey too much with it because there are people who coming in as fans of Beats. I mean, one of the most compelling things that I came across is
all you're buying is a brand.
Well, but because there are people who have sort of kids who have switched over their idea. Their aspirational thing is someday I'll be able to buy my own Apple thing. That's a lot of that has switched over to someday I'll be able to own my own pair of Beats headphones I didn't find in a bus terminal. And so if they monkey too much with that brand, then they will make that disconnection of.
Yeah. Christina Warren had a great post where she wrote about how you used to be the iTunes everyone wants, and now it's the Beats everyone wants, and owning that brand affinity is important.
As we well know, fashion is very fickle, and the fashion trends don't last that long.
I hired a bunch of fashion people, Leo. They can make them gold next year.
I was outside of
a lot of money to spend on something that might not be very hip in 6 months.
I was outside of Walgreens yesterday, and I was walking, and I saw a guy with a pair of Beats headphones who also had an iguana on the top of his head. And I took a picture because I thought it was the freakiest damn thing I ever saw, and a bad use of the Beats logo.
I think that the real answer to this is $1 billion ain't what it used to be, and $3 billion ain't what it used to be, and it was chicken feed for Apple, and it was an experiment.
Maybe it's a failure.
And even if they get absolutely nothing out of it, which is exactly what they're going to get, Jimmy and Dre are going home in about 5 weeks. They still $3 billion. So what? They made more money than that last week.
I like to see Apple taking some risks in that area too. I mean, I think that I like to see them trying to do something down that path and taking some risks. They've got the cash.
Is there risk? Is there any risk really? I mean, there's just
none for them.
Risk. There's no real risk.
Also, there's not money, so like they can remake that money just by selling a lot of high-priced headphones. It's just a lot of loss of time and focus. It's the worst.
Right.
The worst of all possible outcomes is they lose a year of time and focus.
I hear MC Hammer is available.
No, it's Samsung is going to buy Ice Cube and Bose by this time next year.
Yeah. It is something I hadn't thought about. If Apple was aware enough about Beats to know that you're making money, but wow, you're running your business poorly. If we ran it, we could make so much more money out of you, and we would pay this off in about 2 years. So that's something. I'm not a business reporter, so I don't really. That's the first time I really thought about.
Yeah,
that.
and the one negative analyst report was from Sam Haggadah of Privco, who is somewhat. There's some question about how accurate. I mean, you know, analysts. We don't know.
If Angela Ahrens can sell Beats in China, Leo, it's just the problem solved.
Just put a little plaid on them. I think it's a terrible idea. I think it's a huge mistake, and it's in my mind, it's very reactionary. It's exactly the wrong direction.
Should we? I'm certainly not saying this in a hostile way, but I'm wondering that is an interesting comment to see if both of these executives are still working at Apple in 5 or 6 months.
Yeah,
I think
You think they will be?
I think they will be because again, it doesn't seem like okay. Well, we're for flagship purposes and make this look good. We have to sort of have an office and make sure my car is seen pulling into your driveway every Tuesday. That
was a great.
But it will be interesting. I think that if Ivan is still with Apple in January or February, that will really lead to a lot of. I believe this is a real deal, and that would be the best conclusion. That's a real deal.
And I think we're going to see what they're planning in the fall.
I will say, if he's not there, I will say I was wrong.
A part of the iPhone launch, I think what we see in the fall is when we're going to see whatever this is that they're trying to.
My favorite comment from the whole Recode thing is when Ivan goes, "Tomorrow they take the tarps off. I get to see what's under the tarps tomorrow."
Turning around. But remember the funniest thing because this is what WWDC does to your brain. Maybe it's just like following Apple for so many months. The official picture in the official press release was was like Apple and Beats together like at the Apple the big great hall and inside Apple, and you notice that all the Apple people either they have like really crazy long sleeves or Tim is actually holding his wrist like this. So are they wearing the watches and they can't show them on the camera?
Yeah, they had another picture where they all wearing Fitbits too. I wonder if that was to throw us off.
I'm saying this unless you're like playing a pirate like in pantomime, your sleeve should not be this long.
None of them were showing their wrists. I thought that was very interesting.
Dre had nothing.
Dre had nothing. He's saving up for a Rolex.
Forgot about Dre.
We are going to take a break. When we come back, yes, we still do picks. If you guys wish to do picks, you can. All right.
Came in handy, very handy today.
All right, excellent. We'll go to those in a second. Our show today brought to you by also very handy, something you want to keep in your back pocket, Gazelle.com. You know that Andy and I will both be selling our Android phones any minute now. The minute they announce a new iPhone, the value of those other phones goes down very rapidly. Now's the time to take advantage of Gazelle. Get a quote that's good for 30 days on your old electronics. You know, you've got gold in them our drawers, old iPhones. I think Gazelle is, in fact, offering a little premium on iPhones and iPads today because, after all, new ones are around the corner. That iPhone 4, that's not even upgradable for iOS 8. Maybe the iPhone 5S, you want to get a deal on that while it's still worth solid gold. Get that quote. They're good for 30 days. It's not just Apple devices. You can sell your BlackBerry, your HTC, LG, Motorola, Nokia, or Samsung phone, tablets from Samsung, Microsoft, Google, Asus, and Amazon. Yeah, they'll buy your Surface 2 if you want to buy a Surface 3. Absolutely. MacBooks, Apple TVs, Apple displays, and, of course, iPods, too. They're all worth cash at Gazelle. Go to Gazelle.com. Get all the stuff in there. Get the quotes. They're good for 30 days. When you decide to sell them, check out, and they'll send you a mailer. They pay the shipping. They send you a box with a label on it. Pay the shipping on anything worth more than $1. They do buy broken iPhones and iPads for cash. If you forget to wipe the data or you can't because it's broken, they'll do that for you. And then they'll send you a check or a PayPal credit. Or if you're an Amazon user, do go for the Amazon gift card. You get an extra 5% that way. Gazelle's paid more than $100 million to over 700,000 customers. They pay for shipping. They process it. They turn it around. They get you cash in your pocket. How much is... we should do a little Twitter contest where people just go, you don't have to do it, but you just go put all your gadgets in and tweet me how much it's worth at Gazelle. I think it's worth 500, 1,000. I'd like to know who the highest one. Maybe, Lisa, at some point we could get a prize for the person who's... We'd never be able to verify it, though. Person whose Gazelle value is the highest. Like, I got $8,000 in my drawer.
Is there a checkbox you can claim that your iPhone was once owned by Johnny Depp?
That should add value.
There you go.
Gazelle.com. Andy Ihnatko, you have a pick of the week.
Yes, I was, of course, live blogging during the keynote, and I don't, because it's such a Wi-Fi noisy environment that I don't want to tether to my phone via Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, I'm an Android user, and because Android's standard tether by USB driver is a proprietary Microsoft driver that Mac does not support, the only way to share your internet connection from Android to Mac is through Wi-Fi. However, I came across a USB driver called Horndis. Sorry, it's pronounced horrendous, but HORNDIS, and it implements that Microsoft RNDIS protocol. And it's as simple as can be. You just run the installer, and then whenever you cook this up, turn on USB tethering, hook it up by USB. It simply shares your internet connection. Nothing to set, nothing to tweak. It just works. And I always think it's a wireless world, but if I can do something via copper, I would rather do it via copper because it's just so much more reliable. And so this is it's free. It's on GitHub. Doesn't cost you anything, and like I said, works perfectly on 3 different Android phones I tried.
JoshuaWise.com/Horndis. Horrendous. Thank you, Andrew. Rene, Ritchie, your pick of the week.
So I want just one quick thing we didn't cover that I wanted to mention is Test Flight was announced for...
They bought
beta,
Test Flight,
yes.
and now it's available as part of
apparently several hundreds, if not 1,000 people can now beta test your iOS app, which is a tremendous difference than the old
improvement.
Yeah, slots that they had to deal with.
Yeah.
My pick of the week is Vesper. Vesper went to Vesper 2. I have to admit that I do a podcast with Dave Wiskus, who's a designer of the app, but this version had almost nothing to do with him. This was a Brent Simmons job. And he basically, for the things that Andy mentioned earlier, iCloud Sync just didn't work for them. First, they wanted to maybe do a web app. They wanted to maybe do an Android app one day. And they needed to roll their own sync solution. And they came up with a really ingenious one. It works off Windows Azure, I believe, is the back end. And all it does is it syncs your notes from one version of Vesper to another. You can run Vesper on your iPhone. You can run it in 2x mode on your iPad. They've announced they're making a Mac version of it, which is going to be good news for me because I love to power enter notes on the Mac more than anything else. And it's a great little simple notes app that lets you tag things. You don't think tagging makes a difference, but when you start entering a lot of notes and you can tag them and then they're indexed by the tag, suddenly you can find all these things that aren't related in the same note but are related by category or theme or anything else that you want. So Vesper 2, great job by Brent Simmons.
$4.99 on the App Store for iPhone only. Don't search for an iPad version.
No, but you can run it in 2x mode on the.
Alex. Do you have anything?
I think I've been pretty easygoing on folks for a while. But
You haven't had anything too
but I
expensive?
decided to pull the bat back a little bit. So anyway, so one of the things that I've talked about a little bit, but I just want to recommend because it's really changed our entire company is Cisco's Meraki systems. So when you're talking about, like, it's fine to have your airport and you know your airport extreme, and those are all cute. But when you really decide that you want your company to actually work,
what was somebody with Alex's experience, the mountains that he moves. That's cute, I suppose.
It's like, so we started off very slowly with these, and you know, it was one of those things. So Aaron Mailer, who does a lot of our tech back end, you know, he's just like, oh, I use Meraki. You got to use Meraki, and I was like, okay, we'll get to it. And then we put it into our DC office, and then we started putting it everywhere. And the big thing is that with a Meraki system, even with the small ones, the little MX60s that we hook things into, what basically happens is you build a network, and anywhere in the world that you're connected. I mean, literally, we can have a Meraki in Rwanda. They'll plug the Meraki in, and it immediately pops up on my dashboard, and I can see everything below it, and I can see, you know, and it thinks that it's part of the DC, you know.
That's really cool.
It's moving data with its local connection, but all its IPs, all its internal IPs and everything else are all part of our DC. So I can VPN into DC and control anything that's connected to a VPN. So we've got people setting up right now down at the Westin Hotel for some streams tomorrow. And if I want to look at those elementals and set them all up and do whatever else I want, they're all sitting behind a Meraki, and I didn't need any static IPs. I didn't need anything. I just plug it in and I immediately see it. All of our machines, whether most of my staff knows this or not, has, you know, Meraki installed on them. And so I can see every machine. I can see how much of hard drive space there is. I can see everywhere it's gone. I can take screenshots of it. I can, you know, do, you know, and so the thing is that when you really start to dig into this, it's for a company, I just have to say that it's just it's an incredibly powerful thing. Now it's the little MX60s that we use are probably $300 or $400 each. They're not super expensive. They have a service that you pay for. It's like some $400 or $500 a year or something like that. Now the system we put into DC was a little bit more expensive, but the point is that it is an incredible. If you're trying to figure out how to get your company to make sense, if you're a small business that's spread out, which a lot of our businesses are, it's just an incredible piece of hardware system to make it work. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Good pick.
That's it.
Good pick. Meraki. They started as a mesh networking.
Yeah.
Kind of the idea was to spread internet access all over because you'd share your network and stuff. Then they pivoted, and then Cisco bought them, and now they're an enterprise product. It's a completely different product.
So powerful.
Yeah.
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 They do have great features, like if you want to shut all the Wi-Fi down in a couple blocks, you can do that too.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
No comment.
Doesn't seem like a good idea.
It's a great idea when you want your Wi-Fi to work.
I'm going to pick the Apple free Swift programming language reference. Go on and get it. It's on iBooks. We just read through the entire 850 pages, and I think everybody learned a little bit. I know I did. It is a reference. It is not a learning guide. I'm sure there will be in many of them. And, of course, if you're an Apple developer, you can not only get this for free. Even if you're not a developer, you can get this for free on the Apple bookstore. But if you're a developer, you can get Xcode 6, the beta, and download it and play with Swift. And I will be doing that tonight. I'm very excited about that.
You will write a tip calculator like no tip calculator has ever been made.
It's going to have a blimp.
There you go.
A twit calculator.
A twit calculator. Hey, it's so great to have you here, Andy Ihnatko, Chicago Sun-Times. Are you going to stick around the Bay Area for a little bit, or are you going home right away?
I'm going home tomorrow night, but I'll be bopping around a little bit.
Great.
It's
Look
great.
for a man with his cow and his camera.
I've enjoyed this highly interactive version of Twit.
It's nice.
Also, you got a nice kitchen. You got real Mexican Cokes in there.
We get that for you. That's your Mexican Coke.
I might have to move here.
We always buy that for you, you know.
Then you won't mind me taking the remaining 7 bottles with me?
If you wish, you may. Actually. Done. Right? I don't think we buy it for anybody else. Nobody else drinks the Mexican Coke, right? They do? He can take whatever he wants.
I will take one for the road.
We started buying it for Andy, but now everybody's hooked.
It's like the place you save for Elijah.
Yeah.
And that's the cola we have in case.
I should probably explain why this is a big deal. It's because they use cane sugar, not high fructose corn syrup.
And I love
Coca-Cola Refresco.
I love the Costco story. You heard the Costco story, right? Where Costco's bringing, because Costco, you can buy this Coke at Costco, and Coke called Costco and said, "You can't do that. That's from another country. That's against the whole thing. You cannot bring it in." And Costco said, "Fine, we'll stop selling all Coke products." and Coke was like, "Okay, on second hand, never mind."
Did they go to some sort of community college for business that we are buying Coke products that are popular and selling them?
Yeah. How dare you, sir?
That's a very Microsoftian response to somebody who's helping your product get promoted.
We want to thank Rene Ritchie for riding the big stretch limo up to Petaluma.
It was an honor to sidekick Andy.
You flying back to Montreal
It was like going to the prom with Rene. It was wonderful.
Fantastic. I'm going back on Saturday. I'm going to be here all week.
All right. Try the veal.
I will.
Your waitress.
Tip the waitress.
And of course, Alex Lindsay. Nice to have you here.
It's good to be
studio.
here. It's good to be
This is
here.
great. Sometimes I'm all by myself with TV monitors. Sometimes I get to be with all three of you. Thank you for being here.
Hooray.
We do MacBreak Weekly normally on Tuesdays. It's a little different this week because of the WWDC. We'll be back on schedule next week. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. We love it if you watch live. Please do. But if you can't, you can always get on-demand audio and video after the fact at twit.tv/MBW or wherever you get your shows. Don't forget we have wonderful Twit apps, third-party apps in all the platforms, iPad, iPhone, Android, even Windows Phone and BlackBerry. Just check it out on your platform and add it. And that way you can hear every show kind of automatically. If you'd like to be in studio, great studio audience today. Thanks to all of you for being here. Just email tickets at twit.tv and we'll make sure we have a chair out for you. And let's see. We will tomorrow in the MacBreak Weekly Time, it'll be iPad Today. We swapped those two shows. So Sarah Leigh and I will show you some of our favorite apps on the iPad tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific. And coming up next, I don't know, something.
Tech News Tonight.
In 2 hours.
In 18 minutes
now.
ago.
18 minutes ago. I'm looking at the wrong clock this whole time. I thought it was 2 in the afternoon. Whoopsies. Sarah Lane is next with Tech News Tonight. Thanks for joining us. Now get back to work. Break time is long over. See you later. Bye-bye.